Ah, hello. How's it going, y'all? A bit of a long day. This is actually the right here from. How's everyone doing? Looking right now at chat. We got a couple super chats I want to read up on top. But I first want to thank you all for coming by. Last week was streamless because I was dying essentially. I think it might have been the neurovirus. I was very, very ill, so unfortunately I couldn't stream. My house was entirely the same way. But I'm glad right now we can have some time to chill and hang out. Go away a couple minutes, let people start filing in. If you're watching this later on, I will leave a time code for when the thing actually starts in terms of the tier list. Until then, let's take a look at some super chats. Looking around, let me take a look at that real quick. First and foremost, to PureClip, thank you for a month of memberships. If you want to join as a member, you absolutely can. You'll gain access to our exclusive Discord if you do. As a villain, I'm happy to see more villain content. Oh, I'm glad to offer that to you. Any villain content's always good for my books. I do love a good villain story. And there'll be some villain content on the channel coming up soon, different from this stream. When we get around to the upcoming video, I have a couple of videos planned for the next couple of weeks. Baichi Epiodera, thank you for Super Chat. Time to accept the only conclusion to this, and that is to kneel before Doom. Well, Dr. Doom may come up in conversation here. No. We're going to talk about a few Marvel villains here. The Guy, 493, thank you Super Chat. Paul. Yeah, Paul, that sounds right. Paul is basically the big bad of everything. I'm seeing people vouching for Thanos, the Rhino, Doom, Ultron, Magneto, Green Goblin, Onslaught, which, by the way, I really hope they do have Onslaught in here. I'm going to set a goal real quick. By the way, goals, if you... hang on, let me just set this goal real quick for about 2 hours. Alright, cool. A quick little goal there, and cool. That's a little goal for chat. If you reach a certain super chat quotient, I'll rank the MCU villains next. But you know, it's all good. Anyway, so getting back to this, so I'm not so uninteresting. Marvel villains. I have always been a huge comic book fan. I love comics since I was a kid. My first comic was, I believe it was Amazing Spider-Man issue 362. It's the second appearance of Carnage where Venom and Spider-Man have to team up, and that always stuck in my memory a lot. It also instilled a love of the Fantastic Four that I have not been able to shake too much, you know, as time willing. But yeah, no, Marvel has some great villains. But unlike DC, which I think has like a real tier list of who the biggest bad in the world is, I feel like Marvel doesn't really have that. Marvel has a bunch of major villains, but none of them are like the biggest bad in the universe. This is actually really hot. Wow. Yeah, let me switch that air out a little bit so it cools down a bit. Yeah, this teapot I think went a little too hot. I don't want it to crack on me, this porcelain. Making too hot there. Yeah, I'm gonna let the heat escape a little bit on that one because it is a little. It is very hot. Okay, cool. Yeah, I let the water overheat a little bit on this one. Oh, that's a lot of heat contained. Yeah, okay, I can tell. I was hearing like little sounds inside here, so I'm thinking like, okay, I don't want to let the teapot explode on me. That'd be bad. In fact, you know, just make sure it doesn't explode all over the place. I'm gonna move the teapot over a bit on the floor. I'll probably duck down when I need to grab it. There was a bit of an issue a couple months ago where I was really tired and there we go. And I knocked tea over on my computer. It was not very good. But yeah, Marvel has a lot of great villains. Aside from the writing staff, Joe Quesada is, in my opinion, the biggest bad in terms of Marvel for one more day. No joke about that. You're not late. We're just getting started. Need Magneto at top tier. So here's the problem. I plan on doing one for DC villains too, I think. I think it'll be fun. Fun to be had in Ultimate Unit Comics. Sounds gritty and miserable whenever people talk about it. Well, it depends. Do you mean Ultimate Comics will be coming up in discussion? Because I will be discussing in some cases how the ultimate version of a villain is drastically different than the main 616 version. Though probably that's the only alternate continuity I'm going to be discussing, really, except for like stuff like Age of Apocalypse or Days of Future Past and stuff like that. Uh, Random question: have you watched Thomas and Friends or Bluey? I know they are highly regarded children's media. I saw Thomas the Tank Engine when I was a kid. I've never actually seen any of Bluey. I don't really review exclusively kids media. I like to review all kinds of media a lot. Like I don't think, like I have multiple videos talking about horror films. I don't think The Exorcist is children's media. I saw people like who seem to think I review kids media primarily, but I'm kind of surprised by that. Considering like I've done a lot of really dark stuff. Anyway, I'm gonna bring up the tier list right now. Looks like we have a good crowd. Oh, we have a really good crowd coming in, and we have a lot of villains to discuss. So, and if this is successful, I will discuss the DC villains. I may discuss the MCU specific villains. I'm probably not going to mention the MCU too much in this, though they may come up on occasion. Let's adjust this slightly. 1 second, make this a little bigger. There we are. Cool. Make my space slightly larger so you can see more explicitly what's going on here. Cool. Now, some of these icons are a little hard to see, so if I struggle a little bit to see which character it is, please forgive me on that one. Some of these are kind of hard to make out, even with my glasses. My eyesight's not the best, so I apologize if there's some difficulty there. But, yeah, so we have here a few ranks. The one above all. There can only be one on this in this tier. Only one goes on the one above all tier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rank everyone in... Well, actually, let's take a look at this right here. The Masters of Evil. Okay, fair ranking there. The Brotherhood. Good ranking there. So it's basically basically super S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, and D tier. But I am going to say... No, I'm going to rename these because I feel like this is too limiting of a... I'm going to make it S. I'm going to make it A. I'm going to make it B. I know, very, very original names, I know. C and D. But I'm going to make... I'm going to add one row above. Add row above. Which is simply put triple S. Oh, actually, I'll make this one the one above all. So that'll be the... So what I'm going to do is we're going to rank them all up in these first few tiers. And at the very end, we're going to select one from S to be the one above all. There can only be one. There can only be one up there. So, yeah, and Q. Yeah, no. So that's what we're going to be doing. Okay. Now, chat, I may ask your assistance on a couple of these because some of these characters are a little more obscure than others, and some I just physically can't even see. There was a tier list with 200 villains, but I feel like that's almost redundant. Like, there's no reason to have 200 villains when most of them rank at the bottom. I'm not like they had like the individual guys, the Wrecking Crew. They had the Enforcers. They had every single. One Below All from Immortal Hulk. Is One Below All here? I don't think One Below All is here on this list, but the One Below All is a fantastic villain too. Like, just Immortal Hulk. If you have not read Immortal Hulk, you should read that. It is a fantastic comic. It is deeply disturbing. It has like some real Cronenberg level horror in it. It's pretty fantastic. Yeah, this tier list had a lot of the guys I feel like are worth discussing, who have a lot of complexity, a lot of interesting stuff to focus on. And I feel like it's a good place to start. Though, I will say this, they have the annoying thing, well, I didn't realize this until I looked at this tier list, but Morgan Le Fay and Viper, Madam Hydra, look really alike. And I didn't realize that until, like, I started looking at this list, how much they look alike. It's actually very disconcerting. I am glad they have the two big-headed guys next to each other, though. That's a good thing. But yeah, I think we can get started on this one. All right, let's start with this with an unusual first option, Ronan the Accuser. I'm pretty sure this is Ronan the Accuser. Now, the thing about Ronan the Accuser is... Oh, one second. Pasco601, thank you for Super Chat. Hey, Ant, hope you're fighting off that sickness well. Always the best Marvel villain is, of course, Dr. Doom. On an unrelated note, this comment was not paid for by the Latverian government. Well, I'm glad the Latverian government is not paying attention to my live stream because it will make things very awkward if I don't give Doom all the good treatment he deserves. David Deister, thank you for Super Chat. Doom belongs in the one above all. P.S. Can't wait to see your DC villains making tier list. Oh, thank you so much. Now, I should say this right now. Next week's video will be a Marvel and DC villain ranking list. Different from this one. But I'll leave the specifics a surprise. So you can enjoy that when it comes. But, yeah, no, let's get started, shall we? I do love the love for Doom. We'll get to Doom eventually. Don't worry. Anyway, so Ronan the Accuser. Ronan in the comics, if you've only know about Ronan thanks to the MCU, Ronan the Accuser is very different in the comics. He's more of a noble figure. He is more lawful neutral than necessarily lawful evil like he is in the MCU. The MCU made him a little boring, I think. Ronan the Accuser as a Kree judge is actually a very compelling villain in the comics, especially during the Annihilation event. I think, again, the problem is people kind of don't... Oh, Annihilus isn't on here. Now I'm looking at this. Annihilus isn't actually ranked on this list. He's not, doesn't appear. That's unfortunate. Annihilus is another really good villain, too. If Annihilus was on the list, I'd put him around B or so. I think he's a really great antagonist. He's not the Fantastic Four's most memorable villain, but I think he's a really good one, too, in terms of being a ruler of his own domain. He has this whole thing with suffering. And, again, the Annihilation arc is fantastic, though. He is, of course, usurped by the real big bad of that arc, which is Ultron. I think Ronan's solid B. I think he's a really compelling, ambiguous threat. He doesn't appear enough to really stand out. I'll put in C, actually. Although that being said, though, when he's used well, he's really good. Again, Annihilation. Annihilus would be B, though. I don't feel like finding an image for Annihilus right now. I didn't make the tier list, so this is someone else's. Now, who is this? I'm having a hard time figuring out which character this is. I'll get to her later. Unfortunately, I can't really see the image very clearly on my end. I don't think it necessarily that noble traits make them rank low, because otherwise Doom would be pretty low. So we can't do that. I think it's the ranking is based on how compelling of an antagonist they are. In that sense, characters who are more ambiguously a villain, who are not necessarily overly evil, they are able to rank high, despite them not being super evil. That'll come into play when we get to Doom and Magneto later on. And Venom, too. I don't think that's Silk. Yeah, it's Madame Mask? That could be Madame Mask. I don't know. She doesn't... It's one of those characters where I'm like, you look a lot like a bunch of characters, unfortunately, as messy as it is. If it's Madame Mask, then... Yeah, exactly, right? You would think you would have a mask on. Yeah, that's a weird one. I'm going to put Madame Mask in D. I'm not a big Madame Mask fan. She's all right, but I think we need to set some lower tier people here first. But now you got Dark Phoenix. Dark Phoenix is interesting. Because Dark Phoenix, again, Dark Phoenix is most famous for one single storyline, the Dark Phoenix saga. And it's such an impressive story. It's tragic. But I don't know if Dark Phoenix is necessarily the villain of the arc. It's more the idea of the Hellfire Club corrupting and using her, converting her into a monster who goes on a rampage. But Jean Grey as the Phoenix isn't the villain. I think she's a great threat, though. She's able to devour planets. The Phoenix Force is, of course, this greater force of nature. It's a corrupting yet also enhancing element. I think, though, the problem is the problem with Dark Phoenix is that she really is compelling as this force, but she's not. And it's a force that drives Jean Grey into this self-destructive pattern. But like, I don't know. I don't know if the Phoenix is the most interesting character in the Phoenix saga. It's more how the Phoenix impacts everything else. Now, if this was Madeline Pryor, I'd rank her higher because Madeline Pryor has that incredible outfit. She herself is compelling as a character. Her past is tragic, but I don't think that the Dark Phoenix herself is as interesting. And I think another factor at play here is that every adaptation of the Dark Phoenix, other than the 90s animated series, has kind of squandered the potential of the Phoenix by focusing too much on the Phoenix herself and not enough on the impact the Phoenix has. So, in terms of power, and she's incredibly powerful, but power alone doesn't make you interesting. I'm going to put the Dark Phoenix in B, mainly because I think the story around the Dark Phoenix is more compelling than the Phoenix herself as a character. Because again, the Phoenix herself is raw power. The Hellfire Club, how it affects the Shi'ar Empire, the love between Jean Grey and Cyclops, that to me is more compelling than the character of the Dark Phoenix herself. Pasco601, thank you for Super Chat. On a more serious Super Chat for my last one, I think Ultron and Magneto are pretty kino. Yeah, I think Ultron and Magneto are two of the best villains Marvel has. We'll get to the specifics as to why when we get to them. And again, Magneto is very ambiguous because is Magneto a villain? I made a whole video about that. I actually made more than one video about Magneto being the villain or not. I think that Magneto is a very tragic character, and I think there's a lot of ambiguity to his situation that makes him very interesting. Who is that? Is that Daken or is that Namor? I can't tell. Is that Namor or Daken? Because Namor, I don't know if it would even be on the list. Draken, I'm sorry. Draken. We'll get to him. We'll get back to him. Anyway. Yeah, the Enchantress here. The Enchantress is interesting. I think the Enchantress is really interesting. Satana. Where's Satana? Oh, there we go. There's Satana. Wait. Where's Satana? I can't see Satana. Where are you? Oh, right there, right? Satana? Yeah, that's fair. Is it Killmonger? Oh, it might be Killmonger. You're right. Okay. Yeah, that could be Killmonger. That looks like Killmonger. Yeah, okay, Killmonger. The problem is the MCU version of Killmonger is way more interesting than the comics version of Killmonger, I feel like. I'll put Killmonger in B as well. The MCU version, if we're ranking the MCU version, it would be way higher. But Killmonger, I always felt that, I don't know. I always had a little issue with Killmonger as a character because he just keeps dying and coming back. I don't think he's as interesting as the version in the MCU. I think he's one of the better villains of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Red Havoc, thank you for Super Chat. Take my money. Pace Pot Pete / Trapster is clearly one above all. Hey, if that's your opinion, that's fair. The original comic arc with Killmonger is pretty good. Yeah. You know what? I might boost Killmonger up to A. Because of that first arc and because of the MCU. Though this isn't an MCU ranking, it's hard not to factor that in, both in terms of comparison to which is more compelling, but also it's a great villain. Okay. Cool. Killmonger's William Afton. Okay, Enchantress. Enchantress I do like quite a bit. I think she's a very interesting dynamic. I think she's really interesting with her dynamic in terms of using magic and in terms of manipulation. I think it's really cool. She is also extremely powerful, strong. Which version of Killmonger is more evil, comic or MCU? I think the comic is more evil because the MCU version is more tragic. Like there's a tragedy to Killmonger in the films that's not as present in the comic. Enchantress, though, I'm going to put Enchantress, I think A. She is very interesting. She's enchanting. She's dynamic. Has good balance. Big Wheel should be in the one above all, though. The only flaw with this list is there's no Big Wheel. That's a fair point. All right. Anyway, yeah, Enchantress is fun. Like I don't think Enchantress is as incredible of a villain as some of Thor's other bad guys, but she is consistently entertaining. She's not like Cersei from the Wonder Woman comics. Like way more manipulation. Enchantress kind of got an MCU adaptation in the form of Sylvia, the female Loki from the Loki show. I forget what her name is. It's Sylvia. I'm trying to blank on her name. Crud, it's gonna drive me crazy. But I do feel like they need a proper version of Enchantress because she is a very compelling villain. All right, Dormammu. Dormammu is hard to place. The problem with Dormammu is that he is so immensely powerful. It is like Lovecraft tier. Sylvie, there we go. Yeah. Like Dormammu is so obscenely powerful that he can rarely ever really be confronted in the comics proper. Yet he is also such a gigantic level of a threat level. He is this eldritch, nightmarish monster, and it's deeply compelling stuff. But I don't know if that's necessarily all that interesting. Like, I feel like there's a weird thing with like cosmic level threats like this, where the more powerful they become, the less dynamic and interesting they are as characters. And Dormammu, like when he shows up, you stop everything and read what's going on. But Dormammu's rarely ever the guy punching. You know, he's so huge, it's kind of hard to even fathom confronting Dormammu. It's usually he's working through someone else, like Baron Mordo, or, you know, any number of his underlings. I do love how the 90s cartoon for Spider-Man had Dormammu as, like, a reoccurring threat for Spider-Man. It's just so wild that was a thing that happened. I think Dormammu's kind of in the same place that Dark Phoenix is. More interesting for the stories that happen around them than themselves as a character, which is why I'm going to put them at B rank. Sandman. Okay, Sandman I actually do really love. I love Sandman. I'm biased. Even before Spider-Man 3, the movie, I've always loved the Sandman character. One, his power set is fascinating. He is a gigantic man who is comprised of just sand particles. That already is really interesting. He's able to harden and expand and absorb sand into himself. So visually, he's always a very interesting villain to fight. But I've just always liked Sandman because he's not really evil. He's just a criminal. Like for him, it's like a job, and he doesn't seem to have any hard feelings towards the people he fights, even though he may want to pummel the snot out of them, and he's a criminal, he's a villain, but he'll just as soon check in on someone after a fight than, like, there's that one storyline where Ben Grimm gets put in the hospital. It was a Fantastic Four storyline where Sandman and the Thing, they fight, and Sandman ends up in the hospital. The Thing ends up in the hospital, and Sandman shows up with a 6-pack of beer, and they just talk, and it's great. It's absolutely fantastic. I've always loved that little detail. Like that to me is the Sandman. A guy who will beat the snot out of you for a job and then just as quickly come to your hospital bed with a few beers and like just want to chat. Like there's something really wonderful about that. And I always remember the one Spider-Man storyline where it's during the 2000s. It's before the JMS run of Spider-Man, where Sandman reassembles the Sinister Six, and Venom ends up joining for like a spell. and they all kind of make fun of Venom, but Venom gets pissy and then gets revenge on half of the Sinister Six. And he basically kills Sandman. He poisons him in some way. And he's like, has this existential fear of dying. And he ends up like kind of talking to Spider-Man and giving like, you know, his what he thinks is his last rites. Of course, he doesn't die. Actually, he comes back later. He gets better. But for a while, it felt like Sandman had died and that this was his final encounter, his final discussion. It was very sad. I remember as a kid feeling that was very like emotional. So yeah, this is a long way of saying Sandman. I'm actually gonna. This might be a little controversial. I'm gonna put Sandman in S. This might be really controversial. I might change this if I feel like he's more of an A. If I put a bunch of S's on top, but I feel pretty confident about this. I think Sandman is one of those characters who I feel like is the best of the jobber villains, where he comes in for a job and he does his thing, but he's also a very compelling character. He's likable, but also a good threat. He's not, you know what? I'm gonna move him down to A, but like top of A. Now I'm talking about it because I feel like S it has to be special. Sandman is the best of what he is. You know, I love Sandman. All right, this looks like Electro, I'm pretty sure. And I'm going to be honest with y'all. For all the gushing I did about Sandman, I have none of that to say about Electro. I don't like Electro all that much, if I'm being honest with you. Electro is... He is a small little man who gains incredible power and uses that power pathetically. He's a great lesser villain. He's great as a part of the Sinister Six, but I never felt Electro was ever all that compelling. I don't like Electro at all. I think he's a great power set, but as a character, he's so dull and not interesting. I don't know. I think like for all the things I say it's good about Electro, all the things I say it's good about Sandman, I think Electro doesn't have that. Electro's going in C. Electro wishes he was more compelling. I remember like for a while, again in the early 2000s, Mysterio and Electro had like a partnership thing going on, and I always kept thinking Mysterio was the more interesting entry of the two. Anyway, we're gonna put Electro in C. Crossbones. He's nowhere now. Yeah, no. Crossbones. Crossbones is another one who's interesting. He's another like henchman character. I feel like Crossbones' biggest contribution is he's the guy who shot Captain America. Well, he's one of the guys who helped kill Captain America. Not the guy, but he's one of them. Crossbones, I always felt was a good henchman in general. He's a great henchman. He's a good guy who they hired to take on as like a part of a bigger organization like Hydra. But I never felt Crossbones was as a individual all that great of a character. Nick Wolf, thank you for Super Chat. Electro's best when playing off Spidey's quips. I agree. Electro does bounce off Spider-Man quite well, but I think that's because Spider-Man's so interesting, not because Electro's so interesting. Crossbones is just a henchman. I think Crossbones I'm going to put in D. I'm going to be honest with you. I liked Crossbones in the MCU. I think he's really cool there. But again, he's just a minor henchman in that. Shuma Gorath. Okay, Shuma Gorath. Who started off, I think, as a Conan the Barbarian villain, I think, before becoming more of a Doctor Strange antagonist. Shuma Gorath is interesting because, again, he's a lot like Dormammu, he's a lot like Dark Phoenix, a cosmic level threat, more Lovecraftian than not, but I always feel like Shuma Gorath is so visually interesting that it's hard not to love him as a character. Like, he is over the top, he's a little ridiculous. Oh, and he was also funny in Marvel vs. Capcom, too, so. The other villain in D is Madame Mask. I also had trouble identifying her because she was out of costume. Shuma Gorath is great. I won't put Shuma Gorath in A. I don't think there's enough there in terms of character to really put him that high, but I think top of B. I think of these three cosmic threats, Shuma Gorath is the most entertaining as a villain, but he also has less interesting stories than Dark Phoenix or Dormammu does. So, yeah, Crossbones, again, he's interesting in other stories. He's a good henchman. He's not necessarily a great antagonist. The Lizard. Okay, the Lizard. Is Conan the Barbarian from Marvel? Conan the Barbarian was in Marvel for a while. So Conan the Barbarian, for those who don't know, Conan was created by a writer. I just had the Conan books out because I just rewatched the 2011 Conan films. But Conan was licensed by Marvel for some time. He was originally created for the Weird Tales, the old 20s serial that also published, Cthulhu and all that. But the character rights were sold to Marvel for a time, or licensed to Marvel for a time to publish his comics. It was for a period of time. And Shumagorath was created for that line, but Marvel created Shumagorath. And after Marvel lost the Conan rights, they still had the rights to Shumagorath, so they incorporated him into other Marvel titles at the time. Kind of like what they had with Rom the Space Knight and the Transformers comics, as well as Godzilla. The Lizard is interesting, because on one hand, the Lizard is a great visual threat. He is a great monster. And the Jekyll and Hyde dynamic with Kurt Connors, it's really compelling. I really like the Lizard. The problem is that there's not too many good stories you can tell with the Lizard that aren't just a repeat of the same core Lizard story. Where Kurt Connors transforms, he is out of control, Spidey has to save him, and rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. But the exception to that is the Gauntlet storyline. The Gauntlet was a fantastic storyline that really played into the angle of the Lizard. Like, what is the Lizard in terms of... This is really annoying. Why do they do this? They always have these unblockable ads. Hate this. Where the Lizard kind of took over Kurt Connors so thoroughly and so completely that they ended up... what is with this? Go away. Go away. Sorry. The Lizard ends up trying to replace Kurt Connors entirely, to supplant the consciousness, and decides to devour Connors' family. And that story is deeply disturbing. It's deeply intense. But is that interesting beyond that? I don't know. I think that he is a good villain in the storylines that matter with him, but I'm going to be honest, I don't know if I feel that on his own, consistently, he's all that great. So I'm going to put him in B. But I'm going to put him in the bottom of B because I feel like that's fair. And again, Spidey has other really good monster villains we can have instead there. There's a lot of good monster villains that Spidey has. I really hate these ads. These drive me crazy. I really don't like them at all. Okay, cool. Let me just click. Oh, come on, really? Go away. Go away. Anyway, David Deister, thank you for Super Chat. Put Lizard in B. Well, that's what we did. We put him in B. All right, Baron Zemo. Helmut Zemo. Where does Zemo go? Zemo is a great villain. Whether you're talking about the first or second Zemo, I think there's a lot of great stuff there. Yeah, right? We can use some ad block here. This is terrible. This is really terrible. I hate these ads. This is really bad, these ads. Oh my god. Anyway. There we go. So, Helmut Zemo is a great antagonist for, helped found the Thunderbolts. Is partially responsible for Bucky and Cap being frozen. Or Bucky seemingly dying. Zemo, again, it's two different Zemos, yes, but I'm going to count both because they both overlap in a lot of ways. Zemo is one of the biggest villains of Marvel. He's a great... He's involved with a lot of big organized team-ups. You know what? I'm just beating around the bush. Zemo gets an S. Zemo is the first S of the evening. He is the first higher level villain that Marvel has offered. Because he's not just a villain for Cap, he's also a villain for all the greater Marvel continuity in a lot of ways. And that's a lot of fun. Nick Wolf, thank you, Super Chat. Shout out to the 90s Spider-Man cartoon where Secret Wars gave us Lizard with Dr. Connor's intelligence. Basically took the Hulk's row from the OG comics. That's very true. All right. Now, who is this? I feel like I should know this character. Is it Typhoid Mary? Yeah, that's Typhoid Mary. Okay, that's easy. Typhoid Mary's a good villain. I would put Typhoid Mary probably somewhere in... Put Typhoid Mary probably in B above... above Dormammu, but below Dark Phoenix. I think that there's a lot of really good stuff with Typhoid Mary, but I feel like... I feel like they never really capture her full potential there. I think, yeah, B tier is, I think, fair for her. All right, Taskmaster. Can copy anyone's fighting style by observing them. A great jobber, essentially. Really good at certain missions. Can be applied to any sort of application. He can fit into any storyline pretty easily. That being said, though, Taskmaster is not an S tier villain. He can fight anyone. He's really good in any situation, but I don't think he's an S tier villain. I think he is, however, a really good A villain. But I think I'm gonna put him in bottom of A. He's just a lot of fun. You can put him in any storyline. He is a mercenary, that's true. He doesn't need any complex motivation. He just needs to go in, do a job, and there you go. That's it. I hate how there's so many ads here. This really drives me nuts. Anyway, X out of that. There you go. Go stop that there. All right, so. I'm going to put the Taskmaster in B. I'm going to put him top of B. Because, again, as a mercenary, I don't think he's ever there for, like, the complexity of his character. But he is always really good in fights. But I wouldn't put him on par with some of the other the A rankers. We've got some good ones coming up later, so I feel like it's going to be like there's a lot of them coming up that are going to be a lot more that I like than Taskmaster. Okay, Sabretooth. Oh, that was Satana. Oh, that was Satana. Okay. Oh, okay. Satana, yeah, I think Satana's a little higher than that. Satana goes in B. Yeah, I don't know what some of these images they choose are kind of hard for me to tell who's who. A couple of them. So, here we go. Anyway, Sabretooth. Sabretooth is definitely, I think, an S. Sabretooth is a fantastic villain. There's something so absurdly primal and savage about Sabretooth, and cruel. He as a foil to Wolverine, he's fantastic because he is the unchained side of Wolverine that... Actually, no, I'm going to move Sabretooth down to A. But I'm going to put him right behind Sandman now I think about it. He is Wolverine's id. Like, unlocked, pure, raw id. Just pure intensity, pure violence, pure chaos. And I think as a result of that, you really get a sense that there's just a cruelty to Sabretooth. The birthday gifts he gives in particular are really sick, like really twisted. There's a familial relationship with him and Wolverine, but also not like a family thing like in the X-Men movies, but there is this familial kind of like almost like a symbiotic kind of connection where they need each other in some way, but they also hate each other. WC Witt, thank you for Super Chat. Sabretooth's annual twisted birthday gifts to Wolverine earn him an S easily. Yeah, that's why I keep going back and forth. Like, some of them are sick. Like, some of them are really sick. I feel, though, that Sabretooth's a tough one to adapt. I don't think any of the adaptations have truly captured the sheer depravity of Sabretooth in a way that's really just horrible. But again, without Wolverine, is he as compelling? I would say no. Whereas Enchantress without Thor, still a great villain. Sandman without Spider-Man, still a great villain. Zemo without Cap, still a great villain. Taskmaster, well, he's just Taskmaster. But without Wolverine, Sabretooth does lose a lot of the intensity. With Flint, there's a lot going on back and forth with him. Like, he's very... With Flint Marko, with Sandman, as a villain, he's very sympathetic. There's a lot of dimension there that is interesting. With Sabretooth, it's a very shallow character. Though there's a lot implied, he is ultimately best as a foil to Wolverine. But that foil is so compelling. Sabretooth is more evil. Of all the characters here, Sabretooth so far is probably the most evil in terms of sheer cruelty that we've had so far in the list. But evil isn't necessarily the most interesting part of a villain. There's a lot of factors that come into play, but Sabretooth is the most evil so far. All right, the Hood. The Hood's a classic villain. Really great. Well, not classic. He's fairly new. He's fairly new, I think, in the relative scheme of things. Again, very supernatural, very haunting. There's a sense of cosmic dread whenever the Hood shows up. But I'll be honest as well. I think the Hood gets an A. I think behind Enchantress. Yeah, I think that's a fair placement for the Hood. Because again, the Hood is compelling, but the Hood's also kind of a character in and of itself. Again, very much like a symbiotic kind of relationship between that and the Host. Let me just knock all those off. I don't like any of these ads. All right. Yeah, it's very much like the Hood is very much all power, no responsibility in a lot of ways. Forgot Shang-Chi existed. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Scorpion. Mac Gargan. I think Mac Gargan is neat. I like Mac Gargan as a villain. He's a very disturbed character. He's a very cruel character. He is, again, a good foil to Spider-Man. I love his origin story where J. Jonah Jameson basically creates a villain just to attack Spider-Man. But Mac Gargan, I think, is interesting because he became like a bit of a henchman character. Especially during Dark Reign, where he became just... him as Venom, I think I don't like. Of all the major Venoms, Mac Gargan is my least favorite Venom. By a lot. Seeing Eddie tear Mac Gargan apart as Anti-Venom was so cathartic. Seeing the symbiote being ripped off of Mac Gargan's body was cathartic. I do not think that Scorpion is as compelling as Sandman or in the A-tier at all. I think he's a good henchman, but I'm also not going to lie. As time goes on, I kind of like him less and less. I'm going to put him in C. I think Mac Gargan's a good, solid C. I think it's a fair placement for him. High C, but because Mac Gargan was kind of Venom before Venom in a lot of ways, but without he's stuck in a suit because of Spider-Man. He has a grudge, but he's also not as interesting of an antagonist, I think. There's just not enough there to make him as compelling. I don't know. He's all right. Now, that's Abomination. That's not Jackal. So I'm looking at that right now. It's definitely Abomination. You can tell from the fin ears. That's Abomination. Abomination is a great villain. There is a cruelty... One second, let me get myself more tea here. There is a sheer cruelty to Mac Gargan. Not Mac Gargan, I'm sorry. To Abomination. There's a sheer cruelty to Abomination that's unmatched in a lot of villains. He is deeply vile in a way that other characters just don't match. And what he does to... I almost said Betty Brant there. To Betty Ross. What he does to Betty Ross is so cruel and so psychotically evil that it's hard not to kind of love that. Is he, though, S tier? Is he as good as Baron Zemo? I don't think so. I think Abomination gets top of A. I think he is a great villain, but and as a threat to the Hulk, he's also kind of limited because he doesn't get stronger as time goes on. The Hulk always gets stronger, whereas Abomination it's more of a level playing field. He's very much in control. He's very sophisticated, but he's also very dangerous. So he has brains, but he also has power. I think Abomination gets a solid A. But he's a great character. But he's also that kind of thing where the villain has the same power set as the hero. And I don't like that as much. I like it when a villain has a bit different. Like even Venom, for example. Even though Venom is very similar to Spider-Man, there is enough there where they're different. Even though Sabretooth and Wolverine are very similar, there is enough that's different. Abomination, they both have super strength. Like it's the same power in almost the same way. And that to me is a little less interesting. All right, now get on to Carnage. Carnage is a complicated character because on one hand, he is in many ways, he is to Venom what Venom is to Spider-Man. He is the dark shadow to Venom. Way more of a Venom villain now than a Spider-Man villain anymore. Carnage is genuinely nightmare fuel. There's something so horrifying about Carnage. And when he adds, because it's the thing with Carnage is again a lot like Sabretooth. When he acts, you know it's a place of rage, but his rage is very nihilistic. It's a very sadistic cruelty. I don't know, but Carnage is also very simple. He's a very basic character, but sometimes basic is good. There is something so disturbing, though, about even like the Maximum Carnage storyline, the Absolute Carnage storyline, where his goal is just destruction. Like, and he's always, I don't know, there's a cruelty to Carnage that's so effective at what he's trying to do. He's a great villain. But is he S tier? Yeah, he's not like Freddy Krueger, exactly. He's like something out of your nightmares. He is genuinely horrifying. Like he's truly frightening, and he's an example of the extreme. And I love, especially in Maximum Carnage gets a lot of crap for good reason, but I do love the themes in it where it pushes Spider-Man to his ethical limits, like because Spider-Man has a no-kill policy, yes, but not as strict as Batman or Superman's. He will kill on occasion, but it's not that he doesn't want to kill Carnage. It's that Carnage destroys his faith in humanity. That Carnage's actions makes him lose faith that humanity can be good. Whereas with Venom, he doesn't want crossing the line. Spider-Man doesn't want to cross that line with Carnage. But Venom immediately is like, no, we gotta get rid of this guy. He's like, he is the devil. I think Carnage, though, I don't think Carnage is S. I think Carnage is A. I like Carnage more than Abomination, but he's not S. S is a special league all its own. I'm going to bump the Hood down to B as well to make it a little more balanced. Yeah, Carnage is A. That sounds fair to me. He's a very simple idea executed fantastically. And Absolute Carnage especially is one of those stories that's just so interesting and effective. I think Absolute Carnage is fantastic. And again, he was in the first comic I've ever read, so I'm a little biased. The fact he has no rules, no order, that's compelling stuff. Okay. Rhino. Okay. Rhino is dumb as bricks. The Rhino's whole thing is he's a complete dumb thug who just plows into things. He's one of the strongest of Spider-Man's villains. Like he can go toe-to-toe with Abomination or the Hulk, but he's so stupid that he keeps getting himself in danger. Rhino is, again, a good henchman. He's not a compelling villain, with one key exception. The Flowers for Algernon parody story involving Rhino, that's pretty good. But the problem is, it's just Flowers for Algernon with the Rhino. So it's not like it's that compelling of a narrative. Yeah, we're putting him at bottom of C. I'll put him above Electro, but behind Ronan the Accuser. Rhino's fun. He's funny enough in his capacity, but like, he's not a main villain. That might be the problem with Kraven the Hunter. They put him as a main villain. Yeah, who knows? All right, Apocalypse. Look, Apocalypse is S. Okay? That's not even a question. Apocalypse is absolutely S. Apocalypse is to the X-Men what Thanos is to the Avengers. Apocalypse is... His whole thing is he is the first one. He's a guy who overthrew King the Conqueror from Egypt. He's a guy who has bounded himself with celestial items. He is the progenitor of mutant kind. He is someone who exists because he genuinely thinks the world should be ruled by the strong. And as a threat, because here's the thing, he's not just powerful. There's other characters who are stronger, like Dark Phoenix is more powerful. Dormammu is more powerful. But Apocalypse isn't just powerful, he's also brilliant. There is that combination of extreme power and extreme devotion to his ideas. N'Saba isn't just... And in fact, the matter is, he also has a great origin story where he rises up to power in ancient Egypt. There's so much interesting stuff with Apocalypse. And that's not even getting into Krakoa. Krakoa really plays with Apocalypse, with how Apocalypse's morality is shifted and changed when situations are different. He does see himself as the hero, and in some stories you almost get it. He's not as sympathetic as Magneto. He's not. He just isn't. But there is this sense of extreme power here that is just so incredible. And again, Age of Apocalypse is one of the best alternate universe stories ever made. It's a great story. All right, Omega Red. Omega Red. I like Omega Red. I don't love Omega Red. That's the best way of putting it. Omega Red is a great mutant threat. He's a great threat for Wolverine. He's a great threat for the X-Men. I like how they have the Russian angle to it. He absorbs energy. He has those like weird metal tube tentacle things. But I don't think he's that great of a villain. I think he's good. I think he's really good. But I think I'm going to put him below Taskmaster. I think they're both really compelling, but I don't love Omega Red like some people do. WC Wit, thank you for Super Chat. Creating the Horsemen out of familiar characters kicks up Apocalypse's villainy beyond similar villains. Exactly. Like with Apocalypse, the fact he has these horsemen who are characters you know and have gotten to realize, and you see how they became heralds and messengers of Apocalypse. It's very interesting. Yeah, I'm putting him above Satana, though. Yeah, that's fair. Capcom loves Omega Red, and for good reason. He's a great zoner, I think, in the game. Grappler, whatever. There's some cool stuff. Okay, Thanos. Again, S. Thanos is S, but do I put him above or behind Apocalypse? I think Thanos is above Zemo, but below Apocalypse. I'm going to tell you why I think that. Because Thanos, in the comics, just wants to date death. He just wants to impress a girl. That's his motivation for everything. Nick Wolf, thanks Super Chat. Classic Thanos just wants some bonage. Wink. Yeah, no, you're not wrong. The Mad Titan just wants a girl. He just wants to impress a lady by destroying half of reality. That I think is less compelling than his MCU iteration. I will be honest. Comics Thanos is a good villain. He's a great villain. He was fantastic villain. He was capable of having a lot of danger and influence on everything. You put Thanos in any character story, and it's acceptable. But I love Thanos' arc in Infinity Gauntlet to Infinity Saga to Infinity War to Infinity Crusade, where he does settle down as a farmer. Like he's beaten, and because he realizes there's some part of himself that's self-sabotaging that the Infinity Gems respond to. What I think is most compelling about Thanos is he is ultimately under the belief that he deserves to lose. Like, the reason Thanos loses so often is because he authentically believes on some level that he should be stopped. That to me is such an interesting dynamic, that he is self-sabotaging because on some level he knows what he's doing is wrong and he should be stopped. But he does it anyway because he wants something more enough. That's really interesting to me. I like that dynamic. MCU Thanos, far more interesting. Far more interesting. But in terms of the comics, S tier for sure. I think Apocalypse is more interesting. Blackheart, the son of Mephisto. I'll be honest, Blackheart's a good villain. I don't think he's A. I don't think he's B. I think he's probably top of C. Blackheart is a very memorable design. Again, whenever you get to the Legions of Hell, that's always interesting. But I don't think Blackheart is as compelling or tragic as other characters might be. I think he's, again, the problem is he has such a great design that it kind of impacts how I see the character. But if you held my arm, if you put my arm into an arm lock, and you asked me to name a good, I'm gonna put him behind Ronan the Accuser because he's not. You know what? No, I'm gonna put Scorpion behind him too. That's the problem. Ronan the Accuser should be top of C. Blackheart is not as interesting as Ronan. He's more interesting than Scorpion and Rhino and Electro, but I don't know. He's not that compelling compared to, say, Mephisto. Okay, Mystique. Mystique is fascinating. Mystique is a great, great villain. She's Sherlock Holmes. Literally Sherlock Holmes. That's one factor right there. But B, Mystique is a great villain because she doesn't really care about mutant liberation. She's not necessarily in it for some deeper motivation. She's just very self-serving. And I love how messy she is as a character. She has a messy family situation. She's very problematic. She is manipulative, but she's a little mercantile in that she doesn't always side against the X-Men, but she's a great villain. I also have to say this too. I think it's great how one thing I've been talking about a lot too with these characters is how well they can be applied to different antagonists, like different heroes. Can Apocalypse work with someone outside the X-Men? Yeah, of course. He can work with Thor. He can work with as a villain for any of those guys. Mystique started as a Miss Marvel villain, as a Captain Marvel villain, as a Carol Danvers antagonist. That's where she started off. Before becoming an X-Men villain, she started off as a villain for Carol Danvers. But what happened is, because Chris Claremont wrote the Ms. Marvel book at the time and X-Men, he moved, when he put Carol Danvers in with the X-Men a lot, they kind of cross-pollinated villains, including Mystique, and Mystique became more well known as an X-Men villain. But Mystique can be in any situation. And it is, again, Mystique who kicks off the events of Days of Future Past, which is one of the best stories the X-Men have ever encountered. I think Mystique belongs in S. But is she above Thanos and Apocalypse? No. Is she above Baron Zemo? No. I think she's at the bottom of S right now, but she's very firmly in S. She is one of the greatest villains ever, and I think, and has one of the most memorable power sets ever as well. And her story with Destiny, I want to point out, is fantastic. But she's not just great because of what she can do as a threat, in terms of power. She's also great because of the psychological angle between her and Nightcrawler, her and Rogue. There's a real interesting mix there, which I think is so neat. I think that messy family dynamic is really cool. And even Creed, her Grayson Creed, her son, who's the Friends of Humanity's leader, that right there, Graydon Creed, that right there is so interesting. And the fact that she had a child with Sabretooth is already so bizarre. And then that child turned out to be an anti-mutant, like, human liberation person is so interesting. I think that's such an interesting, like, dynamic and how that worked out. There's a lot of cool things that Mystique spawned. Again, like the mythological Echidna, she is the mother of so many different icons. And that, like, there is really cool. All right, Hobgoblin. This is where things get interesting. Hobgoblin's a great villain. But Hobgoblin had his peak in the comics and has never gotten back to that peak. Originally, Hobgoblin was introduced as a sane alternative to the Green Goblin. All the powers of the Green Goblin, but a cold, calculating logic. And the mystery was a secret. No one knew who the Hobgoblin was. It was a big mystery. Ned Leeds ends up being the Hobgoblin. Then it's Jason Macendale. But Ramsey, the guy ended up being this really great villain, really compelling character. The problem is the Hobgoblin had so many different alternative versions. If you talk about the best Hobgoblin, you also got to talk about the worst Hobgoblins. And I think also the problem is that Hobgoblin, after the 90s, became kind of a boring character. They stopped using him so well. And I think that kind of destroyed any chance Hobgoblin had at being above B tier. I'm going to put Hobgoblin on top of B because his potential is fantastic. When he's at his peak, it's great. But when he's at his lowest, it's just embarrassing. I do say this, Jason Macendale, who was the Mark Hamill version, by the way, in the comics had a really great arc where he sells his soul for power and becomes part demon. And he exercises that demonic version of himself, the Demogoblin, from his essence. I always love that narrative because the Demogoblin, a literal demon, turns out to be a better person than Macendale. At the end of the day, Hobgoblin kills the Demogoblin by blowing up a church and the Demogoblin having to catch a column before it falls on an innocent child. And it's such a compelling element where the demon from hell is a more noble person than the villain. That, to me, I think always stood out in memory to me. Nick Wolf, thank you, Super Chat. And Hobgoblin's voiced by Mark Hamill in the 90s show. 100%. Great voice cast there. I love it. Didymus, thank you for Super Chat. The stalker angle of early Venom is forgotten about. I agree. We'll get to Venom when we get to Venom, but I do want to point out that stalker angle is going to play a big role in where I place Venom. Okay. This is not Magneto. This is Onslaught. This ranking is interesting. Yeah, well, there's some cool ones. Again, one above all we'll decide at the end, but there's some odd characters. A lot of B's here. I'm going to move Lizard down to C, and controversial, I'm going to move Dormammu down to C as well. Okay, Onslaught is a beloved character. People love Onslaught, and Onslaught is a powerhouse. He is one of the strongest. It took the X-Men, Fantastic Four, Avengers, all of them to join together to fight him. He is the worst of Professor X and the most determined side of Magneto. But he sucks. He really sucks. He's a great person to fight at the end of a fighting game. He is a great final boss in a video game. But there is nothing to Onslaught that doesn't come from other characters. Onslaught is only interesting because he's a fusion of these other components of other characters. Now, would I see Onslaught in a movie? Oh, hell yeah. But, like, as a character, he's just Magneto. He's just Magneto. Driven to extremes. That's all he is. He's like Magneto with on steroids, and that's it. There's like nothing there. Like, I'm sorry, I know people love this character, but like, he was always so boring to me. Like, he's a great design, a great boss, but there's nothing there. Like, Thanos may have a goofy background, but he's a compelling, tragic character with a Shakespearean tragic flaw. Onslaught is just Magneto, but edgy and bigger and stronger, and that's it. Like, I don't know. Like, there's so many villains that were like just extreme levels of power. You know what Onslaught's like? He's kind of like Imperiex. Imperiex, I think he says, from DC, where he's this great big force that brought everyone together. But when you think about what the character actually is, he's kind of boring. That's what he is. I don't know. I don't like it. Yeah, one's Ultimate Magneto and Onslaught. They're basically the same character. Agreed. Hella's A. Hela is A. I love Hela. Hela is, again, the ruler of hell itself. MCU Hela is one of their best villains, I think. In part thanks to Cate Blanchett. But from the comics alone, Hela is this truly larger-than-life figure. Like, just grandiose, epic, lover. Absolutely fantastic. And has one of the coolest head, like the horn things on her head. It's one of their best designs ever. I think Hela is neat. I think she's very pretty as well. That's not influencing my decision. I'm just pointing it out. Hela is fantastic. The only thing holding her back really is Marvel Rivals, because she is so, like, up until the recent patch, she was so overpowered and frustrating to fight. I'm glad they nerfed her a little bit, but again. So, and she's Loki's daughter. It's true. All right. Doom. Y'all, we've gotten to Doom. Now, we are not going to rank the one above all until the very end. That is the final thing we're going to do. But so far, Doom is in the top of S. Look, listen. How can Doom be anything but top of S? Doom is so over the top and grandiose and ridiculous and insane, but also so logical and charming and compelling. He's like a walking Shakespeare villain, but like in the best possible sense of the word. This is a guy who gave everything up to save his mother from hell. That right there is a noble background. He overthrew a dictatorship in Latveria, only to become a dictator himself. He is destined... He is the one man who can save the world more than anyone else, and squanders it on his grudge against Reed Richards. And let me be perfectly frank, there is nothing funnier than the fact that he got a little scratch on his face and was so upset by it, he put scalding hot metal on his face to hide the little scratch on his face. Doom is fantastic. Doom is... What's so great about Doom is that people just love Doom. Like, he is so loved. Because he's such an over-the-top villain. He is so comically evil and comically petty, but also so noble and sophisticated. And what's also really great about Doom is that he applies to any hero. Let me ask you a question, chat. Who was the first superhero other than the Fantastic Four who Dr. Doom fought? Do you know the answer? What started him as the villain for the Marvel Universe more than just the Fantastic Four? It was Spider-Man. Spider-Man issue number 5 or 6, I forget which one it is, but that was the first issue where Dr. Doom appeared in a book outside the Fantastic Four. And you know, you would never think Spider-Man and Dr. Doom make any sense, but it's a great combination. And from there, he became everyone's bad guy. He became a great Iron Man threat. He became a great threat for the Black Panther. He became a great threat for the Avengers, on the cosmic level, on the supernatural level with Doctor Strange. Like, he became such a great villain for everyone. And A great Squirrel Girl villain. Of course, Squirrel Girl got her introduction stopping Doom with a bunch of squirrels. It's fantastic. Though Doom will never admit that it was actually him who got beaten. It was a Doom bot, clearly. That's the other thing, too. Whenever Doom does something out of character, oh, it's a Doom bot. You can it's the perfect built-in excuse for a writer having a different interpretation. There is so much you can do with Doom. And he's become the big bad of Marvel multiple times. Both the original Secret War and the more recent Secret War event featured Doctor Doom usurping the big bad role by manipulating circumstances for his benefit. It's fantastic. And in Marvel Rivals, he's the big bad of the game. Manipulating circumstances with Dracula, with Null, with all those guys. I don't think Null is on this list, by the way, but I'd probably put Null at like B or so. I think he's a great villain, but he's like Dormammu. He's more interesting because of what he inspires, like with Carnage. But Doom is fantastic. Okay. Dr. Otto Octavius. Doc Ock. So I did a whole video on Spider-Man villains a few months back. I just updated the thumbnail, which I think is much better now. It's gotten more hits since then, so I guess it was a decent thumbnail now. Doc Ock is one of those villains who I just think is fantastic. Doc Ock has never really been, except for one story which I'll get to, he's never really been the biggest threat Spider-Man faces at any given time, but he's always a consistent one. Like, it's not like with Green Goblin where he took over the Spider-Man books for a few years. It's not like Venom. It's not like any of those guys or Moreland. He's never been, except for one big exception, the biggest villain Spider-Man faces. But every time he fights Spider-Man, it's fantastic. There's a real epicness to Doc Ock. There's a real consistent intelligence. He unifies Spider-Man's villains. He is the founding member of the Sinister Six. He was the guy who made it so that all Spider-Man villains, you can see them hanging out at bars on the weekends. In fact, they do hang out in bars in the comics canonically, in part thanks to Doc Ock introducing everyone. He's a great antagonist. He is compelling, grandiose, over the top. And you can't really avoid this one. He is also the man who killed Spider-Man. He did what no one else could. Kill Spider-Man and took over him to become a superior Spider-Man. That is something right there. He destroyed Spider-Man and became him. Only one other villain can really claim that on this list. But even he didn't do it as well as Doc Ock in terms of how successful and over a long-term period of time. Doc Ock is, I think, the best of Spider-Man's villains in terms of how consistent he is. I'm putting Doc Ock above Mystique. I'm not putting him above Zemo, but I am putting Doc Ock above Mystique, which might be controversial, but he's such a great villain. He's always been there for Spider-Man. He may not be, and in a lot of ways, he's the exact counterpoint to Spider-Man. He is a nerdy scientist who gained incredible power, but used it very irresponsibly. And of course, we've been mentioning adaptation throughout this whole thing. Let's talk about Doc Ock in adaptations, because I think Doc Ock, yes, in Spider-Man 2, it is one of the best superhero movie villains ever. Alfred Molina's portrayal of Doc Ock is absolutely powerful. Like, it is an incredible performance. Bar none, no exception. He is fantastic as Doc Ock. But I think the best version of Doc Ock is the PS4 game. It's the Insomniac Spider-Man game. I think that right there is incredible. The tragedy of it, you see the decline, you see his actions, and you see he goes so far beyond what's acceptable to get his goals. Like, he crosses a line harder than anyone could expect in that game. And he's responsible for spoilers for the Insomniac Spider-Man game. He kills Aunt May. Like, he kills Aunt May, which is absolutely such a devastating blow. There's a betrayal there. There's a tragedy there. It's Shakespearean, but also heartbreaking. I do love Alfred Molina as Doc Ock, but I think that the PlayStation 4 game has such a compelling villain, such a tragedy to it. Yeah, and I also love how Spectacular Spider-Man he's voiced by Tom Kenny, which is just really goofy. I think it's Tom Kenny, right? In Spectacular. I love that. It's great. I love all versions of Doc Ock. They're all interesting. There's never been a bad Doc Ock, in my opinion. And I like how he's just like a chunky guy. He's not like muscular. He's not super strong. He's just a potato shaped man who happens to be this like intense monster. Oh, it's not. Oh, it's Peter McNichol. Okay, I'm sorry. There we go. Tom Kenny Penguin. There we go. That's who I was thinking of. Green Goblin is on the list. Don't worry. He's on here. Don't worry. Oh, yeah, and he married Aunt May in the comics. Almost. Because he wanted to get Aunt May's nuclear weapons that she happened to inherit. I love it. It's so goofy. Oh, Tom Kenny's Ultimate Spider-Man. There we go. Ultimate Spider-Man was not that good, but he was good in it, I think. Yeah, true body positive icon, Doc Ock. There we go. All right, Lady Deathstrike. Lady Deathstrike. I like Lady Deathstrike, but I can't in good faith put her above I can't put her above Taskmaster. I just can't. Lady Deathstrike has a real tragic storyline with Logan. There's a real sense of love lost and revenge and anger, but I think she's more compelling than Omega Red in my opinion. But she's not better than Taskmaster. She's not someone who could apply to any story. I think she's a solid B. I think her design's really interesting. I think she was also in one of the best X-Men movies of all time, but that was also completely removed any element of her character, so that doesn't even count. Nick Wolf, thanks Super Chat. I love what 90s X-Men show did with Lady Deathstrike by combining her and Mariko Yoshida, Logan's bride. Really made both feel more fleshed out. I agree. I think Lady Deathstrike works better as that combination. I think it really works well. Zenom, I always mispronounce your name. Zenombine, thank you for Super Chat. The Void / Chaos King / Marquis of Death on here? I don't think so. I don't think the Void's on here. Null's not on here either, which is unfortunate. You know what? Now I'm thinking about it. Lady Deathstrike maybe goes on top of C, I think. I don't think she's as compelling. Again, I think she's compelling more for the 90s cartoon than anything else. I think that right there was really sold it for me. But yeah, there's a lot going on there. I'm not even sure who this is. Now I'm looking at this. Is that from the Hellfire Club? The Black Queen? Chat, is this from the Hellfire Club? I'm having a hard time telling. Unfortunately, Stiltman is not on here. Nor is Big Wheel. I'm really drawing a blank on this character. I'm having a hard time seeing who they are. It's not Domino. It is Celine. Oh, it's Celine. Okay. Yeah, it is the Black Queen. Okay, that's what I thought. For the Hellfire Club alone, some of the stuff the Black Queen does in the comics is absolutely fantastic. I'm gonna put her on top of B. I think above Hobgoblin. I think the Hellfire Club again. There's a lot going on there that's interesting with the Hellfire Club. Collectively, I think the Hellfire Club is one of those consistent villains in comics. It's really, really again with the Dark Phoenix saga. I think that the Hellfire Club was the real villain of that storyline, and everything that happened after that point when the Hellfire Club stops being involved. That's a ramification of that. But I don't think I think Celine is compelling. I think she's tragic. I think she's really, really, really good. I just don't think she's as compelling as some of the A tier ranks, personally. But you know who is? Mr. Sinister. Mr. Sinister is absolutely terrifying, in my honest opinion. I know a lot of people love the ham and cheese version of Sinister the whole Krakoa arc, and I admit I've gotten a little softer on Mr. Sinister as this over the top hammy villain, but there's something so genuinely horrifying about Mr. Sinister in the earlier days, where he's just a sociopath. His whole thing with Madeline Pryor, with the Legacy virus, with Cable, with Apocalypse, with the Summers family line in general, with like the freaking with the Holocaust. There's so much deeply disturbing stuff with Mr. Sinister. He's genuinely nightmare-inducing, I think. I think he's genuinely one of the scariest villains Marvel's ever had. I think his ham and cheese performance is really entertaining, but he becomes like a Disney villain with that. There's something really creepy about the cold obsession he has before. Baichi Epiodera, thank you for Super Chat. I have returned from playing Lorcana to see The Glory of Doom. And we'll have to rewatch, see how Onslaught is at the bottom. You will. It's some fun. Like, here's the thing. If you like Mr. Sinister as a cold sociopath, there's tons of stories with that. Oh, Nate Summers in Age of Apocalypse. I forgot about that. If you like Mr. Sinister as a hammy Disney villain, you have that. I think Sinister is S. Genuinely, he is one of the most unsettling characters, I think, to one of the goofiest. He goes from authentically frightening to the most flamboyantly gay man ever created, and it's fantastic. Queer-coded villains, like, to the extreme of queer-coded villains. It's fantastic. Yes, Sinister's a great bad guy. I think especially him with Apocalypse, that dynamic is really interesting. All right. Sparkstorm, thank you for super chat. As a Morph fan, I am obligated to hate/love Sinister. Lol. Yeah, that too. The 90s cartoon really did a lot of good with Sinister. And I think even the 5th season of the 90s cartoon, the worst one, I'd say, still had some good Sinister moments. Like the flashback episode. That's a really dark episode. I love that. He was also very grotesque in Krakoa, too. He was very over the top, but he was also still doing horribly evil things. Okay, Galactus. Galactus is hard to discuss. Darth Tingle Binks. I love that. Thank you for the super chat. I feel shortchanged by the fact you've never discussed your placement of Satana when you re-ranked her after previously thinking she was Typhoid Mary. Also, how dare they not put the orb on this list? Yeah, true. Satana, I think she's all right. I don't have any strong feelings on her, though, is the thing. I think she's very memorable when she's in a story, but I just don't feel very strongly about her. That's the only thing. Okay, Galactus. Okay, so let's get to Galactus real quick. See, I can't put Galactus any lower than S. He's just one of the greats. I think the fact that he's a force of nature, like a true force of sheer power, is fantastic. And he's tragic. He hungers. He doesn't want to do evil, but he's driven to do destruction. He's so above good and evil. But at the same time, I feel like Galactus is often just used as, this is the biggest threat we can face. And he's not really a villain. He's very tragic, but he's also not as tragic as Magneto or someone like that, because yes, he's a force of nature, but he's also so beyond existence that he doesn't feel sympathetic in the same way that someone else might. Nick Wolf, thanks super chat. Never forget the Twinkie ad where Galactus made Aunt May his herald, golden oldie, and he spared Earth after she found a planet-sized Twinkie. Yeah, that's pretty great. That is pretty good, I'm not gonna lie. Baichi Epiodera, thank you super chat. Galactus or Galactia? Okay, Galactus, obviously. Galactia is interesting and fun, but she's not as much of a character as her father Galactus. And But you know what the thing is, though? I gotta follow my heart in this one. I gotta follow the heart in this one. I gotta put Galactus in A. Top of A, but A. Because while Galactus is a great villain and a great threat, he is rarely developed in the stories he's in. He's often just this massive presence. And when he's a villain, it's because he hungers, and it's more about, subverting his hunger or using the ultimate nullifier to stop him. But I don't know. I just can't put him in S. I think he is such a compelling character, but I just don't. I can't in good faith put him in S because I feel like I should put him in S, but I don't know. I just think he's more used because he's the biggest guy in the room. He's not there for the themes or the ideas. He's more just a cosmic horror entity. Meow Neon, thank you for super chat. Did anyone ironically say Bendis? Yeah, Bendis is the one above all. That's the rank. Yeah, again, the stuff around Galactus is more compelling than Galactus himself. Like the Silver Surfer, his story is more tragic than Galactus, but Galactus didn't. He set emotion, but he's not emotionally involved. He's so cosmic and so beyond that it's kind of hard to invest in his story. I don't know. He's so gigantic, it's hard to really dig into it. Again, a fantastic villain. A is still incredible. If you're in the A rank tier, you're still a great villain, but I just don't think he's an S tier. I don't think I've ever gotten the emotional investment in Galactus' story that other villains do. He's a driving force, but I don't think he is as great a villain as some of the other guys. To be honest with you. He's a way more interesting version of Dormammu. Like, undeniably, he is not as boring as Dormammu is in so many ways. But he is a driver of narrative more than the narrative itself. All right, Norman Osborn. Let's do it. Norman. Okay. Norman Osborn is a fantastic villain. Let's just be blunt about it. He is known as Spider-Man's nemesis for a reason. He single-handedly defines Spider-Man's character despite only appearing for a while in like maybe 5 or 6 stories. Like, he didn't have as many stories as you think. The stories lasted for a while, it was multiple issues, but like Norman really was not in a lot of the old comics as often as you think. In fact, Harry Osborn appeared more often, but the Green Goblin has such a shadow over Spider-Man's life. Just for killing Gwen Stacy and really heralding that, and the Speedy storyline from Green Lantern and Green Arrow really heralded in the Bronze Age of comics. I think Norman is a fantastic villain for that alone. If just for that, he would be an S tier. But then he kept going. He came back, and granted, the Clone Wars was bad. The Clone Saga was bad. I won't say Clone Wars there. It's also bad, but differently. Clone Saga wasn't good. Norman Osborn became the architect of that. Sins Past, also pretty bad. Got retconned, thankfully, out of existence, but still bad. But Secret Invasion, Siege, Dark Reign, great storylines when Norman became the villain of the Marvel Universe. He became the Lex Luthor to the whole Marvel Universe and launched an invasion on Asgard. He was able to spearhead a organization of the most villainous people in the world under his banner in both the Dark Avengers and the Cabal. 2 separate groups that he spearheaded in that time. He turned public opinion against Tony Stark, knocked him out of S.H.I.E.L.D., retook S.H.I.E.L.D. He's such a great villain. The Goblin War angle with Superior Spider-Man, the Red Goblin when he took the Carnage symbiote. even that one storyline where he like makes Flash Thompson get drunk on whiskey and like rams him into a wall, and him and Spider-Man just have their killing joke moment where they both fight, stop fighting, and then just kind of have a weird bonding experience. There's something so fantastic. The Thunderbolts took over the Thunderbolts. Yeah, there we go. He is such a great villain, and that's not even getting into the adaptations. What can I say about Willem Dafoe? Oh, by the way, when I say Clone Wars is bad, I mean Attack of the Clones, not Clone Wars the series. Clone Wars the series is good. I should specify that because I realized that was different than I intended. The Clone Wars show, fantastic. Attack of the Clones, terrible. Anyway, Willem Dafoe. What can you say about Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin that hasn't already been said? Like, how does someone become the big bad of a Spider-Man trilogy? Like, in one movie, and then everything that happens after that happens because of Norman. If it wasn't for Norman, Harry would never become the Green Goblin. Harry would never fund Otto Octavius in a mad attempt to make his father proud of him. He'd never... Spider-Man would never be as isolated as he is during Spider-Man 3. Norman is responsible for everything. How do you take that and then in another universe make Norman Osborn the big bad of the end of a trilogy, and it works? He's one of the best MCU villains, like by a mile. Like, he's up there, top 5, easy for the MCU, very easily, and he barely even does anything in that movie. He does a couple things. He kills Aunt May, I guess. That's one big thing. But like, it's Norman in those films is fantastic. In adaptations, he's fantastic. Like, it's a Spectacular Spider-Man, a great villain. Again, Norman Osborn in the Insomniac games doesn't become Green Goblin yet, but is still a great villain. Like, it is staggering how great of a villain Norman Osborn is as a character. Not just as Green Goblin, but even his impact on other characters. Hobgoblin was trying to capture Green Goblin and failed in many ways. Harry Osborn exists as an extension of his father's legacy. But despite being the Green Goblin for arguably just as long as Norman, no one thinks of Harry Osborn as the Green Goblin. They think of Norman Osborn as the Green Goblin. S. And you know what's controversial? I'm putting him above even Apocalypse. Yeah, I said it. Norman Osborn, more compelling of a villain than Apocalypse. And let me be frank. I'm not saying Norman Osborn is a bigger threat than Apocalypse. I'm not saying he's more powerful than Apocalypse. I am saying that as a villain, as the threat that Spider-Man faces on a regular basis, he is one of the most compelling antagonists in comic history. Baichi Apiodera, thank you for Super Chat. I see a lack of Crimson Dynamo and Mandarin. Not take away from Mr. Goblin Force himself. Mandarin's on here, actually, which is pretty good. He's right here. Mandarin's right here. But we'll get to that. Yep. So, I know some people may disagree with me putting up Goblin that high. But think about it. As a villain for Spider-Man and as a villain for the Marvel Universe, he is one of the biggest. He is every time Goblin appears, it impacts something. He's not a villain who just shows up for a little bit. He may have some of the worst storylines in comic history, like the Clone Saga and Sins Past, but there is something there. Meownion, thank you for Super Chat. Next, rank all Goblin and Goblin adjacent baddies. Not a bad idea, actually. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good idea for a list. Annihilus should be on this list. I agree. All right, Vulture. Okay. Spider-Man's first real supervillain. Chameleon doesn't count. Chameleon sucks. Controversial take. Chameleon's not a good villain. But Vulture, though, there's a tragedy to Vulture. Now, yes, the MCU version of Vulture is the best, one of the best villains in the MCU. Actually, all the Marvel Spider-Man villains are the best villains in the MCU. I think all of Spidey's bad guys are top tier. Vulture is all right. He's above. I think he's above Hobgoblin. I think one of the best arcs for me with Vulture. There's two that really stand out. There's the arc where Vulture, Aunt May is dating this guy, and Vulture accidentally kills this guy, or gets him killed. They're like old crime friends, and he gets this guy killed. And the Vulture kidnaps Aunt May because he wants to get Aunt May alone to personally apologize for getting her boyfriend killed. Like, that to me stands out for whatever reason. There's the one storyline also, I think it's the Mark Millar Marvel Knights Spider-Man run, where Vulture has like a grandkid, and they kind of have like this bonding moment where he's trying to give the kid money for some reason. Does he have cancer? I forget. And yeah, it's a good storyline. There's a lot of good stuff there. And Vulture sucks the youth out of people to become young. That's something there too. Yeah. Nathan. That's the boyfriend. That's Aunt May's boyfriend's name. And Vulture's memorable. He has some good fights with Spider-Man. Even though he's an old man with a pair of wings, he's very compelling. There's a reason most Spider-Man games bring him back. Now, is he as good as Sandman? I would say no. He's by no means. But he's interesting. Oh, he also hired kids as weapons. That was a thing he did at one point. I forgot about that. Yeah, that was in Superior Spider-Man, right? Where like Doc Ock was like horrified by how vile the Vulture can be when push comes to shove. Yeah, he's great. Who is next to Onslaught? That is Madame Mask and Crossbones. Okay. Kraven the Hunter. This is where things get interesting. Because Kraven is memorable for one particular story. Kraven's Last Hunt. He's done other good things about that, and he's done other good things too, beyond that, but Kraven's Last Hunt is such a good story. It is in my opinion, Kraven's Last Hunt is the best Spider-Man story ever. It is a deeply disturbing, deeply dark, deeply tragic narrative. And I just think he has no powers. He just is a good hunter. He has skills, and he's able to beat Spider-Man, replace him, and then fulfill his twisted agenda. I think Kraven gets less interesting when they bring him back, like with the whole Grim Hunt storyline. I think that brings down Kraven quite a bit, because I think it's better when he dies at the end. For the Kraven's Last Hunt, that's an S tier story. If it was just that story, he would be S tier. But unlike Norman and unlike Doc Ock, he doesn't have that follow through. But one good story is all you need. Without Kraven's Last Hunt, Kraven would be B along with Vulture and Hobgoblin. But because of Kraven's Last Hunt, I'm going to split the difference, put him at the top of A. Above Galactus. Yes, I'm putting Kraven above Galactus and Carnage and Abomination and Hela and Sabretooth and Killmonger and Enchantress. Because of one of the best supervillain-centric stories ever written, he gets top of A. I think he's a great villain. I think he's really compelling. Terrible movie they got made with him. But he's a great villain. Yeah. And again, a great villain is often defined by the relationship he has with his hero. And there is a bizarre obsession he has with Spider-Man in a way that's unlike anything else. It's truly tragic and truly horrifying. That story genuinely gets you. You know, there's something about the pacing of Kraven's Last Hunt. The way it's drawn, it feels like it's like a rhythm to it. You know, at the bottom of every page is like the single reoccurring image that's like slowly building, and it's like almost like a mad drum beat. There's something about that that's still, and he is Chameleon's brother. Who cares about that? Chameleon sucks. But I digress. Loki. Loki Laufeyson. Oh my goodness, Loki. Loki's a great villain. Loki's fantastic. I love Loki. Loki's definitely S. But where in S is the question. Loki is the reason the Avengers assembled in both the comics and the films. He has a great arc. You can do him in multiple storylines. He is like constantly causing mischief. I always love like acts of vengeance. I know it's an older storyline, but I love how like Loki's whole plan is just switch the villains around for different heroes. And like he's like, what could go wrong? This is a great plan. Let's put Magneto on the same team as Red Skull. What could go wrong with that? That's a great idea. And the thing about Loki too, he's always up for mischief. He's always trying to. His plans can range from just like he's just trolling people to like, oh, he's a serious threat right now, and it can go from back and forth every couple of minutes, and you're totally fine with it. It totally makes sense. I think the thing with Loki that puts him, in my opinion, above Thanos and Apocalypse, though, is that he can fit into many different stories. With Apocalypse and Thanos, there are specific stories you can use them in. They can only be used in certain types of narratives. With Loki, you can fit into anything. You can fit him in a cosmic, massive story, or like a low-level Ms. Marvel tripping over her feet kind of story. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those things where like Loki can fit in the peak cosmic high-level stories, and it can also fit in slice of life kind of goofy stories. And it makes sense. Like I think so far, Doom, Norman, and Loki fit like a trifecta so far of the best Marvel villains. All three, okay, these three so far, to make things interesting, I already know who I'm going to choose for the one above all, but I'm going to play around and hype it up. So far, in the running for the one above all, we have Doom, Norman, and Loki. These three are all up for this role. They are all some of Marvel's greatest villains. And again, the MCU version, you cannot talk about Loki without mentioning the MCU version, because he is the only villain who has reappeared more than any other. And he has a tragic arc. Loki's a Shakespearean character in so many ways. And Loki's gender fluid and pan. So I'm a little biased there. Because any bi plus acceptance I'm down for. All right, the Mandarin. The Mandarin, the 10 Rings, the Mandarin. Okay, this is where things get confusing. The Mandarin, I have mixed feelings on. Okay. Because when we talk about the Mandarin, you gotta talk about the history of the Mandarin. We've talked about the history of all the other characters so far. And the Mandarin is Iron Man's biggest villain. That is true. But he's also a Fu Manchu character. He is Fu Manchu, essentially. He exists because Marvel couldn't use Fu Manchu for everyone. And that's a problem, because that's a serious anti-Asian stereotype. He is the Yellow Peril manifest. Lizzie Shiro, thank you for Super Chat. I was in high school when the MCU was big, and my friends would not shut up about MCU Loki. Your friends were right. I kind of love MCU Loki. He's a great character. He's one of the best villains they've got. And I think that is so compelling and so interesting. I like Loki quite a lot. Yeah, so and it doesn't help that Tom Hiddleston's a very attractive man. That's undeniable. Who can argue that? But I do think that his tragedy hit that Tumblr sexy man vibe that they were just looking for at the time. So he's got that going for him, or her. Also gender fluid. I want to point that out. He becomes a she, and back and forth quite often. But he always identifies as a problem. Some days he's a girl, some days he's a boy, but he's always a pain in the ass, which I love. Ooga Booga, thank you for Super Chat. Here's the thing. All of Iron Man villains suck. Yeah, that's the thing. I'm going to be honest. Mandarin, for the Fu, he's top of C for me. Again, the MCU version of the Mandarin is a fantastic character, but these are not the MCU characters. And the thing about the MCU version of the Mandarin is they change a lot about who the Mandarin is. They really change a ton about who the Mandarin is in the MCU. Multiple times. The MCU versions of the Mandarin, and I am counting the AIM stuff and the fake Mandarin, are more compelling in my opinion than comic Mandarin. Controversial opinion, I know, but I just don't like the origins of the Mandarin. I don't like where it comes from. I don't like the stereotypes. It always rubs me the wrong way. They've tried to adjust it, but I've always not. It hasn't sat well with me. So I can't in good faith put the Mandarin that high. All right. I'm going to use the bathroom real quick because I just had a whole pot of tea. But let me pour myself one last cup. But when I return, we're going to get started talking about Magneto. So I'll be right back. Give me about 5 minutes. If you need a drink of something, now's your chance to get a drink of something. I will be right back. Can we come back? Right back. Okay, back. Sorry about that. There we go. Sorry about that. I knew I should put the music on. It was getting a little creepy again, I'm sure. Okay. Cool. So, sorry about that little delay. I am back. Just had to do it because I was in the middle of consuming all the tea. All right, bye, Chiepio Dara. Thank you for Super Chat. Oh, we reached our goal. Fantastic. So that means we will rank MCU villains at some point in the future. Maybe tonight, maybe next week. Who knows? Depending on how much time we have. The Iron Man Armored Adventures Mandarin is still the best one. Hey, that's fair. That is very fair. It's a fair point there. So. Magneto. Oh boy. Magneto. Did I miss anything? Did I miss a super chat? No, okay. I don't think I missed a super. I don't think I missed anything. I thought I saw like someone in chat said I didn't read a super chat. I think I read everything. Anyway, Magneto. Is Magneto a villain? I'm not answering that question today. I made a video about that. But for the sake of discussion, here he is a villain. Now keep in mind, all of these characters I'm grading not necessarily on how evil they are, not on how powerful they are, but how great of a counter, of a threat they are to the heroes. In this sense, Magneto is S. Magneto is equal to Doom in this sense. Magneto is tragic. He is a tragic figure. He is a figure defined by pain, by abuse, by trauma, by horror, and he is one step away from being the hero the world needs, and one step away from being its greatest threat at the same time. It's hard to say if Magneto is too far gone to be a hero. In the comics for the last decade, he's basically been a hero. He is undeniably one of the best antagonist of the X-Men. He pushes them. He tests their ideas. He tests the limits of Charles's dream. He forces them to confront the world and go, this is ugly and horrible and vile, that what's happening to mutants, and that we should not stand by and let this happen. Any minority can tell you that's a tempting offer, and one that validates itself with real life implications consistently. He is I don't know if he's a villain, but I do know he's a great antagonist. He is not just he's not just a physical threat or an external threat. He's also an interpersonal, introspective threat. What is enough? At what point do you stop fighting for freedom? At what point does the fight become too costly? Neon, thank you for Super Chat. Morrison would definitely call him a real villain. That is also true. Grant Morrison really thinks Magneto is a petty small man. But their opinions are their opinions. Grant Morrison might think that Magneto is a villain. I disagree with Grant Morrison's interpretation of Magneto, though. And Mr. Fantastic took him down with a wooden pistol. That is true. But the thing about Magneto is that he's also a great villain for anyone who fights him. He's not just simply an X-Men antagonist. He could be put into any situation. And I think the biggest contrast is how people see Magneto versus how the X-Men see Magneto. Never forget, in the original Secret Wars event, Magneto is put on the hero side by the Beyonder. The Beyonder looks at Magneto and goes, yeah, no, I think he should go with the Avengers and the X-Men. Like, that speaks volumes about how Magneto is perceived. He's a tragic character, one that's heartbreaking and earnest, and I just love Magneto. I made a whole video about how interesting Magneto is. And again, talking about movies, if we're talking about these different interpretations, Magneto in the live-action films is one of the most consistently compelling parts of those movies. And again, other adaptations, X-Men 97, X-Men the animated series from the 90s. Fantastic iteration. The fact that so many people at the end of X-Men 97 were like, no, Magneto was right. That tells you made a fantastic iteration of the character. All right. Mephisto. Again, we'll talk about Doom and Magneto and Green Goblin and Loki when we get to the one above all. So far, they're the top contenders for that rank. But really, Mephisto sucks. I can't stand Mephisto. Mephisto is so irritating. And the fact that he destroyed Peter Parker's marriage is in particular the most infuriating thing possible. Which is why he goes in A tier, above Killmonger. I think that Mephisto is, for the real life horror that he's inflicted, he deserves A. He is so... And yeah, sure, Ghost Rider and all that stuff. He rules hell. Okay, sure, whatever. But for one more day, he personally hurt me from that. Him and Joe Quesada. So he's getting an A tier because that's a villain move. For doing something so heinous that you cause psychic damage to people in real life, that's pretty vile. And he's just a jerk. Like, he's just an asshole. Like, Mephisto's thing is, he's just, like, a petty little, like, jerk. And it's great. Like, there's something so, like, he has all this phenomenal power. And he just wants to ruin Peter Parker's marriage. Because why not? It's so horrible. Like, he loses the children, whatever. But, like, there's something so ridiculous about the fact that that's like the thing everyone remembers if you know about Mephisto, you know him because of One More Day. Like, he has all the other stories. Like, he's Infinity Gauntlet, he's Ghost Rider, all that. But, like, really, Doctor Doom's mom and all that. But really, it's because he took Spider-Man's marriage away. That's why he is where he is. Surtur. Surtur is interesting. This fire giant harkens in Ragnarok. He is the herald of Ragnarok, the death of the gods, and that's great. John Salter, thank you, Super Chat. Remember that in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, when Spider-Man defeats Firebrand, he says, you sort of look like the guy who ruined my marriage. I love it. Baichi Apiodera, thank you, Super Chat. If Mephisto didn't stop playing with spiders, a small Russian girl wouldn't have taken Limbo from him. Yeah, that's true. That is true. Good old Magic. I love Magic. Magic's another great character, too. Anyway, Surtur. Surtur is great for the Ragnarok story, but as a character, he's not that compelling. I gotta put him around the same place as I put Blackheart. A little above Blackheart, because the power factor really is so interesting. And again, the death of the gods, Ragnarok, that's an interesting narrative that it kind of works. But Surtur, as an antagonist, just isn't all that compelling. I do love how Mr. Krabs voices him in the MCU, though. That is pretty fun. I'm going to boot Electro down to D, because the more like Electro, the worse he gets. Yeah, and again, I think Loki, Thor, and Odin working together to stop Surtur, that's great. But a lot of characters, it's not great because of Surtur. It's more the story around Surtur is compelling. He's more of a factor than the driving narrative of the problem. Okay, MODOK. I'm going to be honest, I never liked MODOK. He's just, I don't know. I don't like MODOK as a character. He always struck me as really annoying. He's really goofy. I know people love MODOK. I know he's cheesy and goofy, but I apparently during Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, there were a lot of MODOK fans. I didn't know they existed, but I just don't really like him. He's just kind of weird. He's so goofy, but not in a Shocker way where I like Shocker. He's just a dumb character. He's a silly guy. He's a really silly guy. But I think he's always they just throw MODOK into stories to be the bad guy. He's a very easy bad guy to fight. I don't know. He's cheesy and goofy. I gotta put him in top of B because I feel like he's so iconic. I can't not put him in B. Because whenever I see MODOK, I do kind of smirk. I will say that. I kind of laugh whenever I see MODOK. There's such an element about MODOK that's so inherently bizarre. It's hard not to love it. But I just don't find him interesting. I'm never I'm going to read a MODOK story. I'm going to really good story with MODOK in it. He's just kind of there. Baichi Epiodera, thank you, Super Chat. He's a giant's head on a dwarf's body. Exactly. There we go. He's a solid B. He's a good villain to put into a story when you can't figure out who the bad guy should be. You know what I mean? If you have if you have an idea for a story with the heroes and you're oh, who's the bad guy going to be? Let's put MODOK and AIM in there. Why not? MODOK is a weird character. All right, I think this is Morgan Le Fay and that this is Madam Hydra. Morgan Le Fay. Again, cosmic threat, magic. I don't think Morgan Le Fay is particularly memorable, though. I put Morgan Le Fay in C. I'm gonna put her above Surtur, but below Ronan. I think Ronan is a little better than people think he is. I'm gonna boost Ronan up actually a couple points too. I'm gonna put him above Dormammu. I'm gonna put Ronan above the Mandarin too. The more I sit with Ronan, the more I like Ronan. So I'm gonna put him up above a little more. Yeah, Morgan Le Fay is fun with Doom, but there's not a whole lot. I don't know. I think she's kind of again, Morgan Le Fay is a classic character, but I don't know. I just don't love. I just don't love her character. I have to tell you. I don't know. Like she's not really. Like I don't know. I don't think of her as a Marvel character because it's Morgan Le Fay. You know. I don't know. Good dynamic with Doom, sure, but like I don't know. All right, Kang the Conqueror. Now, Kang is a big deal. Kang is a very widely loved villain, really complex, has a lot of iterations. Rama Tut is instrumental in Doom's not Doom's and Apocalypse's story. Nathan Iron Lad is really interesting in the Young Avengers. Council of Kangs and all that. That's really cool. I'm not gonna lie to you. I think he's a high A. I think he's below. I'll put him above Carnage, but below Galactus. Nathaniel Richards. There we go. I never loved King of the Conqueror. I always enjoyed him. He's always a fun villain. I think he's really good in Earth's Mightiest Heroes. But, like, I don't think Kang is all that great a villain. Like, he's a weird character. Like, he is, like, again, with time travel, all these different iterations. Like, Immortus is different from Vamatut, who's different from Kang. It's like different points in time, you're dealing with a whole different character. So, like, the collective that is Kang is interesting. But he's so confusing, and it's hard to always map out where he is in his own timeline versus everything else. Earth's Mightiest Heroes Kang is fantastic, but it's also a much simpler version of Kang. Like, the more you get in the comics, the stranger Kang gets, and the harder it is to really figure out what's going on with him. Earth's Mightiest Heroes is a fantastic version of Kang. That is the exceptional version. But, like, it's hard to know what you feel about Kang, because depending on which version exists at what time, he has different, like, relationships with people, and that changes as time goes on. It's really strange. I don't know. I don't like Kang all that much. When they announced Kang was going to be the big bad of Marvel for a while, and then they dropped that when Jonathan Majors turned out to be Jonathan Majors, I was never as enthusiastic about Kang as I was about Thanos. I don't know. I think for his heights, he gets into A. But he is so complicated, it's kind of hard to really figure out. Oh, Darth Tingle Banks, thank you for Super Chat. Morgan Le Fay never really struck me as a villain, especially after learning how despicable Merlin is in Arthurian legend. Well, Arthurian legends we get really complicated, because Arthurian legend has all these different components. And, Arthurian legend, depending which version of the story you're reading, you can read a totally different version of the narrative. And Merlin is part demon in some versions. He's the child of an incubus, I believe. So it's very complicated how you feel about it all. And Morgan Le Fay, also in the Arthurian legends, not that evil, becomes a nun by the end of it. She just kind of gets over the whole being the villain thing. That's interesting. That's neat. Madam Hydra, Viper, some might call her. Good Hydra head, but Hydra is more interesting as an organization than any individual member, with one key exception, that being the Red Skull. I don't think Madam Hydra is all that interesting. I think she is a more generic feeling villain. I think she's below. I'll put her in mid C. I don't know. I don't really think that. I'm going to put Rhino also a point down. I'm going to put Rhino in D. I'm going to move him down. Yeah, Madam Hydra just feels generic. I'll be honest with you. Like, she doesn't feel. Like, she feels like a femme fatale secret agent villain. Like, she's not super compelling on her own, I feel. All right, Mysterio. Again, a fantastic villain. Mysterio is super compelling. They're, again, hard not to talk about the MCU, but I'll bring it up here. As I mentioned before, Mysterio is one of the MCU version of Mysterio is one of the best MCU villains, period. And one of the best parts of What If, I might add, too. I think the Mysterio episode of What If was the best one of that last season. Mysterio is also responsible for other horrors. He is responsible for the Old Man Logan storyline because he drives Wolverine to kill the whole of the X-Men. He is responsible for the death of Karen Page in the comics because he manipulates Daredevil into fake. He fakes his own death in front of Daredevil, which is very difficult to do. He bridges the gap between the Ultimate and 616 universe with the two Spider-Men. He's a great villain. He's a great idea, and I love it. And again, seeing it in comments too, he has a really good backstory where he is a special effects guy because he couldn't become a star, but he felt like he needed to be the star. He is, again, the MCU version of Mysterio. I make the argument that Mysterio in the MCU is one of the most vile characters there. He doxes a small kid publicly because he's pissed off that he's having his own weapons turned against him. He's being undermined by Spider-Man. And again, the thing is, Mysterio orchestrates his own destruction. Like again, very Shakespearean. He tragically is the one who kills himself by accident in his pursuit to hurt Spider-Man. He's a psychological threat. He's compelling. He's disturbing. And he's very, very cruel and vindictive. Mysterio is just a great bad guy. And depending on the narrative, he could be a joke character or he could be the most dangerous figure around. I think Mysterio is easy A. Not S, but easy A. I'm going to put Mysterio in at, I think, above Kang the Conqueror, but below Galactus, but above Kang, above Carnage, above all these other guys. I'm going to put Enchantress down a level 2 to B, just to make it a little more even visually. No, yeah. He ruined Peter Parker's life in the MCU. That's worth mentioning. In adaptations, I feel like even in the 90s animated series, I think Mysterio had some really good elements to him. Really compelling. Had a tragic ending. There's a lot of tragedy in the 90s Spider-Man cartoon, too. Mysterio in that's really good, I think. Nick Wolf, thank you for Super Chat. If they ever did more Batman/Spider-Man crossovers, I want Bane and Kraven teaming up, as well as Mysterio and Basil Karlo/Clayface. I would like to see Mysterio and Scarecrow team up too. But Clayface makes more sense with the theatrical element and the disguise. I like that a lot more than the initial idea. Yeah, no, I love that. Okay. Red Skull. Red Skull is iconic, undeniable. He is an icon. He is truly one of the most evil characters in Marvel Comics. I can't put Red Skull any lower than S. I'm going to put Red Skull above Sinister, but Red Skull is vile. Like, Red Skull is truly terrifying in so many ways. He is easily one of the most villainous characters in all of Marvel. And, like, it's a special kind of evil if you make everyone hate you. Everyone hates Red Skull. There is no one on his side outside of Hydra. Kingpin hates him. Magneto hates him. Doom hates him. No one likes Red Skull. He is just vile. He is the villain other villains fight because they just hate him that much. Joker doesn't like him in the Captain America Batman crossover. Like, it's a special kind of evil to make him the biggest bad there is. Also, I might add this too. Red Skull, really good in the MCU. I think he was a good villain. I know that like Hugo Weaving couldn't stand playing him, but he's a great villain all the same. All right, here's where we get into things that are a little more complicated. The Maker. The Maker is tough to rank, because the rank maker really is a tragedy in real time. When the Ultimate Universe started, no one thought that Ultimate Reed Richards would turn into its biggest villain. But he becomes this immortal monster, like truly terrifying, who has become like a sociopathic. Like, very quickly, the Maker has become one of the scariest characters in Marvel. Like, sheer psychopathy, sheer. The things he's doing in the Ultimate Comics run, what he did to that alternate version of Reed Richards, that is one of the most sadistically cruel things I've ever seen any villain do to the person he was trying to fight. And that's after his pettiness against 616 Reed because of the Secret Wars event. Like, he and again, not just simply, again, like a lot of great villains, he can be applied to different characters. For a while, the Maker was the big bad of the Venom books, alongside Carnage and alongside Null. The Maker's actions lead to absolute carnage, lead to the arrival of Null, the King in Black. And the Maker sees no long-term repercussions for his actions. He's always one step ahead. I think the Maker, authentically, I can't put him above Doc Ock because I think Doc Ock's a more interesting character, but the Maker is so haunting and so unsettling. By Giappio Dare, thank you, Super Chat. The Maker destroyed the Ultimate Universe, then made it again, and purged superheroes. He is truly an evil hero. I would say a purely evil, tragic hero who turned into the most vicious monster of all time. And the fact that he's so ancient, he is so old because of the way time worked around him. He has crafted whole worlds, built in his image multiple times, and they're all horrible dystopias. Nick Wolf, thanks Super Chat. Like Doctor Doom, the Maker could do real good for the world if he could just get some therapy and move past his drama. Shame his dad was poop. Yeah. But the problem is he's so beyond that. He refuses to ever get anyone that can look at his problems. Truly, the Maker is a flexible character. Hey, I see what you did there. Yeah, no. Maker is S. Okay, the Leader. Leader's a great villain. Really good villain. I don't like him more than Abomination, but I respect that he is to the Hulk what Lex Luthor is to Superman. An intelligent, clever character. And like the Maker, is a really oversized head. I'll be honest though, I think the Leader gets top of B. I think he's a really great villain, but like, I don't think he's like the biggest of all time. I think top of B is fair. The Leader has a lot of really good stuff. But I don't know if I feel like he's the best. Okay. Ultron. All right, there's too many S tier villains. I'm gonna put Sinister at top of A. Sinister's moving down to top of A. There's too many S tier. S tier has to be special. Because Ultron's also going up there. Ultron is... I'm gonna put Enchantress above Leader, actually. Yeah, I'm gonna move a couple of rounds. So Ultron is S tier. He is Hank Pym's greatest failure turned into a massive threat. In fact, I'm gonna move Ultron higher. I think he's with Thanos in terms of threat level. Ultron isn't just a threat to the Avengers. He's a threat to the universe. The Annihilation storyline shows that Ultron is capable of cosmic damage. He is horrifying. Like, there is something so disturbing about Ultron. The cold, but also anger to him. Like, there's a sheer cruelty that drives him. There's a desperation for him to procreate, to preserve himself in the memory of his existence. But in the process, he creates Vision, creates Jocasta. He creates people who do good in his wake, and I think it bewilders him that they're able to have this humanity when they're more advanced. It shows the flaw of Ultron's power. Age of Ultron is powerful too, but Annihilation really shows how dangerous Ultron is. And I'll say this, controversial opinion, I think the MCU version of Ultron's really good too. Could he be better? Yes. But I think the MCU version is really solid as well for what they're trying to do. I just think that it's a little messy how it's done. James Spader has some moments in Age of Ultron that are so haunting. Yes, a lot of it's goofy. He is jokey a little too much, but there are a couple bits in that movie where you see genuine horror, the horror of Ultron seeping through. And I'll say this, Ultron almost made What If a good show. At times. Almost. But yeah, Ultron, he's an S. I'm going to move Red Skull down to top of A as well. I feel like we have too many S-ranked villains, and that's no good. And Killmonger's going down to B as well. Just to make it a little more balanced. Okay, the Sentinels. The Sentinels from the X-Men are by far, they're a lot. The Sentinels are a lot, is the easy way of putting it. But are the Sentinels are more a mass of robots. They're not as compelling individually as collectively. I think they deserve in the A tier. I think they need to be somewhere here. I think above Abomination, I think above Hela, I think above Carnage, I think above King. But the Sentinels are also responsible for some deeply upsetting stuff. Krakoa ends because of the Sentinels. Days of Future Past. Bastion in X-Men 97. They're great jobbers, and they're great main villains. That's the thing that's so terrifying. Because the Sentinels represent humanity's sheer cruelty and capacity for extermination. Yeah, I'm including Bastion and Nimrod. I'm including all of them. All the Sentinels in one category. Collectively, they're an A. At their worst, they're basic jobbers who get clobbered. At their best, they are Genosha destroying, Krakoa annihilating, future ending threats. They drive so many narratives, but they themselves aren't always what drive it. Sometimes they're representative of the forces of bigotry. And they're at the core of what X-Men stories are about. You know what? Yeah, you know what? Sentinels get the bottom of S, I think. The more I'm talking about, the more I'm driving myself to think this. Because the Sentinel stories with Krakoa, with Genosha, with Days of Future Past, they are representations of the cruelest instincts of mankind in a way that so few characters are. And again, they represent true bigotry, which is a real thing that exists and is extremely harmful to the world. Marvel has a lot of great villains, as what I'm seeing from this. There's so many S and A and B tiers. It's fantastic. Silver Sable, though. Also, with 97, I think, with X-Men 97, there is the horror of the fact of the matter is that the X-Men watch as the Sentinels hollow people out from the inside. It's really like what happens when hate hollows out a person, wiring their way under the skin to, like, peel away the layers. It's super frightening, I think. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to do. Now, Silver Sable. I don't think of Silver Sable as a villain at all. She's more like a mercenary, but, like, I guess I'll put her in C because I don't see her as a villain at all. I don't think she really ever was really a villain. More like an antagonist, I guess. But great, fun character, but I don't really see her as a villain. She was pretty good in the Spider-Man Insomniac games, but I don't think of her as a villain. She's more like, again, like a mercenary, but unlike Taskmaster, is a little more virtuous, I feel like. Yeah. Silver Samurai. One of the better Wolverine solo villains, I think. More so than Lady Deathstrike, more so than Omega Red. I think Silver Samurai is a lot of fun. But I can't put Silver Samurai any higher than B. So I'm going to put Silver Samurai above Hobgoblin, below Vulture. I think he's a really fun character. And again, the dynamic between him and Logan is really good. Okay, who even is this? Is that Typhoid Mary? Having a hard time with some of these characters. Like a redhead, red dress. Is that Typhoid Mary? I think it is. I can't believe I'm forgetting some of these characters. I'm like, who is this? Whatever. It's Sin. Oh, Sin! I forgot about Sin. Oh, Sin. I should go with Madame Hydra. I'm sorry. Sin's kind of... I'm putting her in D. Sin's kind of forgettable. I'm not going to lie. Like, she's totally not all that compelling. Like, again, daughter of the Red Skull. Red Skull's the more compelling villain. I'm sorry. She's an extension of Red Skull as far as I'm concerned. Okay, Bullseye. Bullseye is great. Bullseye is a genuinely intense villain. He is, again, in the Frank Miller X-Men run. Frank Miller Daredevil run. He does some of the best, like the most terrifying stuff. He is vile, he is psychotic, he is terrifying. But he's also been really interesting other stories. Again, he's friends with Deadpool. Like Deadpool, like he's one of those characters who, like, depending on what story you put him in, totally different vibe. When he's fighting Daredevil, Bullseye is frightening. Like there's a genuine intensity to him. And the fact of the matter is, he's just an assassin who just doesn't miss. Like he just anything he wants is a weapon in his hands. That's frightening to me. He's psychotic, twisted, sick. But you put him with Deadpool, they're like best buds. It's really interesting how that works out because you see different facets of him depending on who you put him with. He's either a good jobber or he is the ultimate threat to Daredevil in terms of hand-to-hand combat and whatever. Except for one guy we'll get to later. Yeah, he's a B, he's A tier, but we're in A. I'm gonna put Bullseye above King, above Mysterio, but not above Galactus. And yeah, he killed Electro. That's a big factor too. We're left with 4 final characters, and one of which I want to get out of the way right now. Black Cat. Black Cat is a villain. She is an antagonist, but though she's more well known. Oh yeah, and Karen Page as well. Almost forgot about that. I always think Mysterio is the one with that, but Bullseye really was what. Yeah, so Felicia Hardy, she is a bad guy. She is a villain, more an anti-hero too, but you know. I think Black Cat's a villain. She started off as the Catwoman to Spider-Man's Batman and has taken over mafia organizations before. But she flips back and forth, along with the next character, Venom, but we'll get to Venom separately. Felicia, though, as an antagonist, is less compelling than Felicia as a hero. I'm going to put her in B, but because she is a great character, but she really is not a villain. It's really pushing it there. But speaking of characters who aren't the villain, but have been at some points, let's talk about Venom. Now, here's my bias out the door. Venom is one of my all-time favorite comic book characters. I've always loved Venom. Venom's a character I could talk about endlessly, and I will. As a villain, Venom is fascinating. Venom starts off as a man whose life was completely ruined by Spider-Man. Like, yes, the symbiote also was rejected, and love Spider-Man was rejected. That's also a factor as well. But Eddie Brock's life was destroyed because of the Sin Eater conflict, and he had cancer, he had all that, and he's driven for this petty revenge against Spider-Man. It's super petty. He stalks him. He follows him around. Like he there's a scene in the early comics where he waits in Peter Parker's apartment. Mary Jane comes home, sees Venom, thinks it's her husband, and then he just terrifies her. There's something so frightening about the first couple of storylines with Venom, where he'll show up to Aunt May's house and just start folding laundry, help her out with the laundry, waiting for Peter Parker to come over, knowing he will see him there and know the implicit threat that he could have just killed Aunt May whenever he wanted, but chose not to. But what makes Venom, I think, more interesting is that he's not evil. He just really hates Spider-Man, but he's not evil. And you start to see shades of that more and more and more as he gets into his Lethal Protector arc. Where, yeah, he's still the villain, he's still an antagonist, but he also is there to help. He wants to help people. He wants to be the hero that Spider-Man wasn't in his eyes. And that's compelling. Because unlike some characters who you're like, are they really a villain? Venom was undeniably the bad guy. And I did a video about this not long ago where I talked about his arc with Wolverine. There's a storyline that was retconned into Venom's past where he meets Wolverine at a bar and they fight. And Wolverine basically tells Venom that he thinks he's pathetic, he thinks he's wasting his potential because he's so caught up in his grudge against Spider-Man that he can't be the man he should be. And it's interesting how that plays in relation to Venom's arc as it goes on, where he tries to meet his potential. Venom becomes a hero over and over again. Not just when he sacrifices the anti-Venom suit to stop the Spider Island storyline, not just when he fights the King in Black, but even in the early comics where he ends up selling his suit for charity, giving up being Venom even though he knows it will kill him. By Chiepio O'Dara, thank you for super chat. Gotta give your main the ability to body slam the point. But Venom, Suit, and Eddie are truly vengeful and vindictive to Spider-Man. To Peter, yeah, 100%. He is still vindictive, and that vindictiveness costs Venom. You know, his villainy comes at a great cost. His ex-wife ends her own life because of the trauma of bonding with the Venom symbiote. The trauma of being near Eddie makes him lose more than he ever wanted. And there's something so tragic to that. He wants to be a hero, but his own actions result in him experiencing pain. I think a lot of people fail to understand Venom all that well because they think, oh, he's just Spider-Man but bigger and scarier. And that's what some people who really fail to understand Venom get, you know? They think, oh, he's just a scary monster with claws. Like, no, he's a very tragic character who brings about pain to himself and only gets better when he grows as a character. There's such an interesting idea to that. Such a great character. Yeah, Venom's S tier, but the question is where on S tier he goes. I personally think he's one of my all-time favorite characters, so I'm biased. But, in my opinion, because of the arc, because of the tragedy, because of the narrative, I think Venom is more compelling than Thanos. He's mid-S. He's in there. He's not in the ranking for the one above all. He just can't be. He's not at that level of high quality writing consistently. But I think that Venom is up there alongside Loki and Apocalypse in terms of characters who are, at the end of the day, really tragic. The reason why Ultron isn't higher is because he is ultimately a one note. He is destructive. He is horror. He is cold. Venom has shades. Venom grows. He develops. He becomes his own villain as opposed to someone else. He's forced to change when he fights Carnage. He's given the same... He gets his own Venom. He gets the same person that he helps create and feels responsible, much like Spider-Man feels responsible for creating Venom. It's tragic and fascinating how many layers that writers have added to Venom over the years. And I think that's why I gotta say Venom's up there. I think he's more compelling than a lot of the top tier villains because of his arc. We're left with two more villains, both of whom are considered some of the greats. I want to save Kingpin for last, so let's do Juggernaut right now. Juggernaut is an unstoppable force. He will plow through everything. An icon, truly. But it's also dumb. It's very dumb. He's not a very smart man. He's also become kind of a hero like Venom to an extent with the X-Men. He hasn't really been a villain for some time now. I think Juggernaut's a solid A. I think Juggernaut is up there. I think he's above Abomination. He's above Hela. He's above Carnage. He's above Kang. He's not above Mysterio or Bullseye, though. This is where Juggernaut sits, right here in the middle of A. He is a great character. And yet, he's also a meme. Undeniably so. Him being a dumbass is really charming, though. I like Juggernaut. He's fun. All right. Kingpin. Kingpin is to the city what Thanos is to the cosmos. He is the big threat. Kingpin is definitely an S, but is he above Thanos? He's definitely above Venom. He's above Apocalypse. I'd say Kingpin goes right here. Kingpin is also in the running for the one above all. It's down to 5 characters now. Doom, Magneto, Osborn, Loki. I'm going to put Osborn right here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to rearrange this slightly. Yeah, this feels more right to me. This feels more right. This is our top 5. Doom, Magneto, Loki, Kingpin, Osborn. I think that, quite frankly, Kingpin is such a great Spider-Man villain, but with Daredevil, he really takes off. Born Again, the comic storyline, is so cruel and so savage that Wilson Fisk really takes off. And controversial opinion, I think every iteration of Kingpin has been fantastic outside of the comics. All of them, across the board. The 90s Spider-Man show, fantastic. Across, Into the Spider-Verse, fantastic. The MCU, absolutely fantastic. The 2003 Daredevil movie, fantastic. The Trial of the Incredible Hulk, less fantastic, but still really good. Kingpin is a fantastic villain, just truly terrifying. And he doesn't have any powers. He has no superpower. He's a really strong, very smart guy who's able to cripple the greatest of superheroes. He is truly fantastic. Now, let's take in terms of villainy. Let's take a look at our tier list real quick. Here's our rankings so far. Here is all D. Here is all C. Here is all B. Here is all A. And here is all S. But now we come to the final ranking of the night. Who is the one above all? Let's analyze this. Now, I think from the ranking, it's pretty clear. I do think Norman, as fascinating as he is, just doesn't compare to this top four. Yeah, Norman is fantastic, but he's not top four yet. Norman's more specialized with Spider-Man. Nick Wolf, thanks super chat. Does Tombstone from Spectacular Spider-Man cartoon count as Kingpin? No, Tombstone's Tombstone. He's a whole different character. Also a great character, but not Kingpin. Very different. Is Kingpin like Lex Luthor from Marvel? Yeah, I'd say so. Very similar, as a matter of fact. Okay. So everyone's saying Doom, Doom, Doom. But let's think about this for a second. Let's actually assess this from a few different standpoints. I want to look at a few factors right here with these four characters. Doom, Magneto, Loki, and Kingpin. The first one is how much of a threat they pose to their respective main antagonist. That being Doom to Reed Richards, Magneto to the X-Men, Loki to Thor, and Kingpin to Daredevil and Spider-Man. Doom is, of course, I think, truly brilliant. Magic, science, power. But Magneto is also very compelling, too. I think Magneto serves more of a psychological and thematic threat to the X-Men than Doom does to Reed Richards. Though they both are fantastic. Loki, again, more mischievous. Loki, I feel, gets beaten a lot. Kind of hard to really make you the biggest threat to Thor when you're physically much weaker than Thor. Noel would probably be around B tier, by the way. I'm seeing people ask where Noel would be. Probably around B tier. Kingpin, though, Kingpin is psychologically destructive. He is able to really pick someone apart psychologically. He's able to really, demolish someone on a real socioeconomic level. Loki is fantastic, but I don't think he's ever scored a victory as intense as Doom or Magneto or Kingpin. As much as I love Loki, he would never be the guy to pull a Born Again or ripping out the adamantium skeleton of Logan or Secret Wars with Doom. Yeah, I'm going to put this right now. I think Loki, as much as I love Loki, Kingpin's a much bigger threat to his characters because there's something just so sadistic and cruel about Kingpin. He's the guy who just had Aunt May shot. Because pettiness. Kingpin's actions led to One More Day. Think about that. Without Kingpin, there is no One More Day. Also, we're not counting Doom ripping out Thanos' spine because that's under the influence of God Emperor of Doom. Of God Emperor Doom. Super, super powerful Doom. Doom on a regular basis, though, is a very compelling threat. And also, Loki isn't interested in the true pain that Kingpin would be interested in. Loki wants to play fun, mischievous pranks, occasionally going into something more cruel. But Kingpin's default is cruelty. Doom isn't always cruel except when it's with Reed Richards. Now, the one thing also here is that Doom can be anyone's bad guy. Doom can fight any single villain in the Marvel Universe, and it's compelling. That gives him an edge above all the other villains. Kingpin has a lot of versatility as well. Magneto and Loki as well. Magneto's probably the most specialized. He only really works with the X-Men. He can fight everyone else. That's true. But he's mainly an X-Men villain because he ties in so well with the idea of mutant kind. But because X-Men is so big, it applies to a lot of different characters. Okay. Chat, I leave it in your hands. Who is the one above all? Chat, you have 3 options. 4 options. Doom, Magneto, Kingpin, or Loki? Chat, you have the floor. This is your chance. I will let you decide who is the one above all. And I know there's a lot of you in chat, so let's take a look. Give you guys a few moments to decide. Looks to me like it's very slanted towards Doom, but Magneto's getting closer, is close too. Doom or we riot. Okay. Oh, wow. So 53 votes are in. Doom's at 59%. Magneto's at 31%. And the other two are trailing behind. There's a lot of people in chat, though, so a lot of people haven't voted yet. Even in the future, even in the past, no one rivals Doom. Yeah, Magneto also, in fairness, isn't really that villainous. So I think that's a factor as well. Magneto is so sympathetic that it's almost hard to see him as the bad guy. But Magneto's also incredibly well written. We have a lot of people who haven't voted yet. I'm going to leave the thing open for a couple more minutes. In the meantime, I will say this. Everyone in S tier are among the greatest of these. Listen, Wilson Fisk is a big deal. Kingpin's is a threat. You know? Kingpin is a monster. If you're just listening in chat, I do recommend you vote. We're running out of time. Though it looks like there is one that stands apart. That there is one above all else. Splungus, thank you for Super Chat. Vote for Magnet Man. Oh, I see what you're saying. Magnet Man is pretty good. Vote like your life depends on it. Yeah. Venom wins the badass contest. Yeah, okay. Of all of these, Venom is the most badass. Undeniably so. I mean, he fought Null. Like, right? That's pretty badass. I feel like, in my opinion, Magneto is the better character. Magneto is the better character in terms of writing, but in terms of being a villain. I'm closing off the voting in about 30 seconds. So if you haven't voted yet, now's your time to vote. Latveria is hacking this poll. Oh my goodness. Pulling an Elon Musk. I see how it is. I'm kidding. I don't want to make that joke. That's too topical for my tastes. Venom is the hottest. Yeah, that's a fair point also. 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And you know what? I agree with the poll. Magneto, in my opinion, is the character I like more. If you held me to it, I would say Magneto is my favorite of the characters here. But Doom is the one above all. Doom is the best Marvel villain. Just hands down. Just across the board, he is everything a Marvel villain should be. Nick Wolf, thank you for Super Chat. And how high would have Sauron, a.k.a. Mr. I don't want to cure cancer. I want to turn people into dinosaurs. Rank on the list of viewers included. Sauron's a good X-Men villain, I think. Savage Land's really cool. That one line alone puts him into B tier. But I think he's just at B tier. Because Sauron's that one scene is just so iconic. It's great. Doom is the champion. I'm sure everyone's shocked that Doom ranked as the one above all. But who is the one below all? It's Onslaught. The answer is Onslaught. Onslaught is the one below all. Because he sucks. Onslaught's terrible, I would say. Actually, you know what? No. I'll leave this to the poll as well. Who is the one below all, chat? Is it Onslaught? Is it Crossbones? Is it Madame Mask? or is it Sin? Which of the following on this tier? And by the way, this is just for the villains on the tier list. Obviously, they are worse villains than all of these combined. I mean, you could be the Jackal. I'm kidding. Jackal's interesting enough. Yes, context. Onslaught, the worst parts of Xavier and Magneto mixed together. Crossbones, a Hydra agent who happened to shoot Captain America. Madam Mask, Sin, the daughter of Red Skull. There's not much to Madam Mask, honestly. I feel like this one's a pretty easy... Oh, wow. Sin's actually pretty close. But I just feel like Onslaught's so boring. I feel like Crossbones has his stories. He's just kind of... Add Bendis. Yeah, Bendis would be... Paul is the one below all. That's the actual answer, but... You know, we can't include Paul. All right, it looks like we have an answer. I'm gonna end polls in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yep, it's Onslaught. Onslaught is the one below all. Bootleg Magneto Man sweep. Yeah, exactly. Magneto got somewhere. And this is also why Magneto doesn't work as a pure villain. Onslaught. There you go. That or Ultimate Magneto, which is also pretty bad. Marvel vs. Capcom, though, is great, but Onslaught as a character isn't why that works. It's the fact he's a big force they have to fight. Now, the goal of this chat has been met. I will do a ranking of the MCU villains at some point in the future, probably closer to the release of Captain America Brave New World. But for right now, my lips are very chapped from talking so much. I've drank an entire pot of tea. It's time for us to close things out for today. Now, a lot of villains were not on that list. I know everyone's upset that the Shocker wasn't included. And I know that the Big Wheel was denied an opportunity to be the one above all. But rest assured, the Big Wheel is in our hearts. He is in our hearts as the best. Truly. But it's not over yet, because we have another stream to raid, as usual. So, if you all don't mind sticking around for the raid, please tell Jazzy you were sent to her stream by me. By the way, this Thursday I'll be joining Jazzy on her channel, so subscribe when you get there, where we're going to be playing Sonic 06 together. So, that'd be fun. But until then, take care, everyone, and stick around for the raid, which starts once this stream comes to a close.